Chapter 684. Qualified. Qualified. Powell and Broom tried hard to make their voices sound more spirited and less listless. After all, witnessing the birth of a new Guinness World Record was something to be happy about. Every time the two of them said qualified in their broken Mandarin, the audience cheered in unison. Chen Guang leaned back in his chair, feeling the threads of faith gradually flowing into him from the heads of the audience. He was very satisfied. He began to look forward to the effect of this program when it was broadcasted on television. In just a short period of time, about 1,000 spectators had provided more than 1,000 faith points in total. These audience members were at the scene and were more affected by the atmosphere of the outside world, so it was natural that their faith was much stronger than the average person's. The effect of the audience in front of the television would definitely be weaker, but if the number of people could reach 9 million, and they were all instigated by his own fans, the amount of faith gained could be expected. Oh, Baldy and the rest are here too. Chen Guang smiled and waved at the Anti-Light Alliance crowd, greeting his die-hard fans. Brother Almighty waved to us. He waved to us. The vice president was so excited that he almost fainted from happiness. Baldy curled his lips and glanced at Chen Guang disdainfully. That detestable guy had succeeded in showing off again. You will get your retribution sooner or later. Scum. Scum. Animal. Chen shimmy. Although he was cursing in his heart, a thread of faith actually popped out of his head and connected to Chen Guang's cup. Chen Guang almost laughed out loud. This guy hated him so much but had no choice but to worship him. It was so cute. Director Wang was also leaning back in his chair in the broadcasting room. It was a perfect start. He seemed to have foreseen the ratings for this episode. It would probably be the king of the Wednesday night slot after so many years. Happiness came too suddenly, catching people off guard. Director Wang had heard a legend in the industry. No matter which television station it was, as long as they had a big tree like Chen Guang, their ratings were guaranteed. From the Dechuan Province Arts Channel to the Dechuan Province Satellite TV, they had all become the pioneers. Now, it was finally their Central TV Channel 13's turn. Previously, he didn't quite believe it and took it as a joke. Now that he finally had the chance to experience what it was like to fly with Brother Allrounder, it was so cool that it made his hair stand on end. At this moment, his phone rang. When he picked it up, it turned out to be Deputy Director Lu Debao. I heard that Chen Guang is working in your program team? Lu Debao sounded a little excited. Director Wang nodded. Yes, Director Lu. I just finished recording Mr. Chen's part. What do you think? Did anything go wrong? Lu Debao seemed to be very concerned. Director Wang did not know what was going on, but he still said honestly, the performance was very good. Mr. Chen was sharpening a pencil. He is a god in this field. Those were his exact words. Sharpen pencils? Lu Debao was stunned. What the hell? Director Lu, don't be so surprised. I can't explain it clearly in such a short time. After I finish recording today, I'll bring a copy to your office for you to take a look. No problem. But you must remember, regarding Chen Guang's program, you must promote it in a positive manner. You must make the program look good and popular until he is satisfied. Do you understand? The station has just had a meeting. If there are no accidents, the station will allocate more resources to your program team for the next 3 days. Make good use of this opportunity and try to get the Wednesday night slot. Yes, sir. I will not disappoint you. Director Wang clenched his fist excitedly. Lu Debao had already hung up. He did not know why, but the leader seemed to place too much importance on Chen Guang's program team. But this was not something a small director like him should be thinking about. He only needed to use the leader's sword and push the matter to its death. The opportunity for me, old Wang, to make a comeback has come. It's like a pie falling from the sky. At this moment, the door to the director's office was suddenly pushed open. The loud bang shocked Director Wang, who was immersed in his meteoric rise. He tilted from his chair and nearly fell on his butt. What the hell? Don't you know we're recording a program now? Before he could finish speaking, he realized it was Marianne Smith's plump body standing at the door. He suddenly stopped. This fat woman was up to something again. Director Wang supported himself on the chair and stood up. He forced himself to hide the unhappy expression on his face. Mrs. Smith looked around and walked in. Director Wang's assistant followed behind apologetically. Director Wang, Mrs. Smith said she has something to tell you. Old Wang secretly rolled his eyes. How could I not know what it is? Didn't you see me kneeling in front of Qin Guang in the challenge mode? Now you want to come here to stir up trouble? Is there something wrong with this foreigner's brain? Do you really think you're the boss just because you're rich? If it was before, Director Wang might have been afraid of Mrs. Smith. After all, she was the Guinness Asia-Pacific region's chairman. If she insisted on making things difficult for her, it would have a very negative impact on the program team. But now that he had hung up on Deputy Director Liu Debao, he had a deep understanding of the higher-ups. No matter how stubborn old Wang was, he could not go against Qin Guang just like Mrs. Smith wanted. Mrs. Smith, if you have anything to say, please say it directly. We're currently in the middle of recording, so I can't leave my post. Director Wang did not intend to avoid the others. She started chatting with Mrs. Smith in English with a very bad London suburban accent. Mrs. Smith looked at the other staff members in the studio unhappily. She was not very willing to say her request in front of so many people, but seeing that Director Wang's but seemed to be glued to the chair, she could not do anything about it. I request that your program team cut out Qin Guang's program. She might as well get straight to the point. It was not a big deal even if others heard it. Mrs. Smith did not know that the super black-bellied Director Wang had already quietly turned on the microphone in the studio. Her words were not only heard by the people in the studio, but also resounded throughout the entire broadcast hall. Powell and Broom, who had just sat down dejectedly, were startled. They stood up from their seats. The two of them looked at each other. They knew that the fat woman could not hold it in and had run to the program team's studio to make a scene. But why did their conversation appear in the broadcast hall? Did someone make a mistake and forget to turn off the microphone? Although many people in the audience in the hall could not understand English, there were always people who could translate for the others. Things suddenly became interesting. Mrs. Smith's words were like sodium metal thrown into boiling water, causing the entire broadcast hall to explode. Who is this stupid woman? Why does she have to cut out Brother All-Rounder's program? She's crazy. She's causing trouble. Chen Guang's expression also darkened, but he quickly calmed down. Director Wang was very black-bellied. He did not think that it was an accident that the microphone had been turned on. That old man had done it on purpose. On the other side, Powell and Broom had already gotten up quickly and were planning to head backstage. However, Qin Guang blocked their way. The two of you, behind us is the program studio. Unauthorized personnel are not allowed to enter, Qin Guang said with a chuckle as he crossed his hands. Get out of the way. Mrs. Smith is inside. Powell said as he tried to push Qin Guang. In terms of size, he was a size bigger than Qin Guang. Broom, on the other hand, planned to slip past him. Unexpectedly, Qin Guang grabbed the back of Broom's shirt with one hand and suddenly reached out with the other to press on Powell's shoulder. The terrifying force made the two tall foreigners unable to move. Qin Guang remained expressionless. I've just become a security guard for the television station. This is my job. If you try to force your way in, I don't mind sharpening your bones like pencils. Why don't you give it a try? The conversation in the studio was still going on when Director Wang's voice rang out again. Dear Mrs. Smith, although you're the chairman of the Guinness Society's Asia-Pacific region, your request is too ridiculous. Chen Guang's challenge has been verified by both the Guinness Society and our program team. It's fair and open, in line with the spirit of Guinness and the regulations of our television station. Why should we cut it? I'm sorry, but I can't agree to your request. The black-bellied comrade Old Wang had sold out Mrs. Smith's identity just like that. Some of the quick-witted audience members had already realized that it was the fat woman who had been sitting in the guest's seat earlier. She was the chairman of the Asia-Pacific region? What the hell? Those who offend the Chinese must be punished. A fat foreign woman like you came here to suppress Brother All-Rounder? Damn it, don't you know where you are? Mrs. Smith was stunned for a moment. How could she have expected Director Wang to reject her so decisively? She did not know that their conversation had directly appeared in the studio. Mr. Wang, since you know that I'm the chairman of the Guinness Society's Asia-Pacific region, you should know that I have a veto. Her plump body continued to press forward. However, old Wang did not budge. Of course I know that, but as far as I know, your veto should be raised in public on stage, and you have to come up with a convincing reason. You shouldn't come to me during the recording process and ask me to cut Chen Guang's program for no reason. That's not a veto. That's called manipulation. Shut up. I told you to cut his scene, did you hear me? You yellow-skinned idiot. Monkey. Mariana lost control, and her breathing became heavier. However, she did not know that it was even more out of control in the studio outside. Powell and Broom were frightened by the rapidly enraged crowd. The two of them sat on the ground, their minds buzzing. It was over, it was all over. Mrs. Smith was done for. She had humiliated the other party's skin color in such a semi-public setting. This was completely intolerable in the upper-class society of Europe and America. This was racism. She had crossed the line. She had gone crazy. Mrs. Smith, please watch your language. This is China, and there are 1.5 billion yellow-skinned people here. We are not monkeys, we are the descendants of the dragon. Thank you. Old Wang was also angry. F***ck, I've been treating you with respect, and you're playing racism with me? Please go back and look at the calendar. This is the 21st century, not the era of the Eight-Nation Alliance's invasion of China. However, the furious Mrs. Smith had no intention of restraining herself. Do you know what your stupid actions will cost you? Believe it or not, on behalf of the Guinness Association, I will terminate our cooperation with you. Your stupid show can go to hell. Powell and Broom looked at each other and smiled bitterly. Come on, you represent the Guinness Association. If this matter were to get out, we would have to pack up and leave. Besides, it would not be a good thing for the Guinness Association to terminate the cooperation with China Central Television. They would lose the largest market in the world. Even if they lost Smith's jewelry, they might not be able to afford such a loss. Old Wang was shocked at first. He did not expect this person to be so crazy, but then he remembered Liu Debao's words. He made up his mind and said, "Is that so? If the association really decides to do so, then it's really regrettable. If you continue to be so unreasonable, I will indeed report this matter to my superiors. We will seriously consider the association's request and terminate our cooperation of many years. After all, China can also have our own certification system. No one is indispensable, right?" Mrs. Smith was completely dumbfounded. Her anger receded like the tide. In fact, she was just threatening him, but she did not expect him to respond so decisively. If the cooperation between the two parties was really ruined because of her, even if she was the boss of Smith's Jewelry, she would not be able to explain it to the other people in the association. After all, the so-called non-profit Guinness Association was not only rich, but also rich people. Some of the people were even European and American nobles. She felt as if a bucket of cold water had been poured over her head. She quickly calmed down and said, "Mr. Wang, please forgive me for being rash just now. I was just a little." At this time, she did not know that her words had been heard by the people outside. Director Wang waved his hand impatiently and said, "Mrs. Smith, I understand how you feel. Chen Guang is indeed handsome and has extraordinary charm, but we Wuxia people are a little more feudal, so your request is a little too much for him. As for me, I am just an inconspicuous staff doing my job. Please don't make things difficult for me. I'm sorry, please leave. I have to work." Since he was already black-bellied, old Wang might as well be even more black-bellied. It was a pity that he could not go out and see for himself. He really wanted to know how lively it would be when the people in the studio heard that Mrs. Smith had tried to sleep with Chen Guang and came to make trouble for no reason. When Mrs. Smith angrily walked out of the director's room, old Wang immediately turned off the microphone, put his hand on the table, and rested his chin on his palm. "Anyway, you can make trouble. It doesn't matter if you make a scene today. At most, you can record for another day. As long as Chen Guang's scenes are done and edited in, I will be done." Since the scene was destined to get out of control, It would be better to make it even more explosive. Mrs. Smith, don't be scared to tears. Director Wang, this is not going to happen, right? The assistant came over. Old Wang waved his hand carelessly and said, "It's not a big deal. Even if the sky doesn't fall, the big boss will take care of it. At most, we can change the sky. In the future, let's change the name of our show to Wuxia's 5,000-year unique skill. How about that? Very good, very good. Very domineering." Chapter 685. From the beginning to the end, Chen Guang blocked the backstage entrance, not giving Powell and Broom any chance. The two of them sat cross-legged on the floor dejectedly. Their minds were a mess. Although it was Mrs. Smith who had caused the trouble, the two of them, as staff members present, had to bear some responsibility for their negligence. What should they do now? The two of them had no choice but to stare blankly at the backstage with Chen Guang's leg between them. It was only a step away, but it felt like a chasm. Mrs. Smith finally came out. She took big strides, unable to conceal her anger. She still did not give up. Today was only a recording. As long as this crappy program was not broadcast, she would still have a chance to take Chen Guang's camera down. She did not know what the program team director was relying on, but it did not matter. He could choose not to give face to her alone. At most, she could just find a few friends from the association to greet the leader of the Wuxia television station. It was just to take away the camera of an internet celebrity. It shouldn't be that difficult, right? Hearing the thumping footsteps behind him, Chen Guang turned around to take a look, then quickly moved to the side, afraid that he would be tainted by this person's bad luck. B** starred, "You've successfully angered me. Don't think that I can't do anything to you. You will regret your arrogance." With the situation turning out this way, Mrs. Smith no longer had the initial admiration for Chen Guang. She only secretly hated this guy for not knowing what was good for him. He had embarrassed her and put her in a difficult position. Just you wait. When you beg me for mercy, I will call my wolf-like sisters over. I will make you afraid of women for the rest of your life. Powell, Broom, what are you two doing squatting here? Seeing that Chen Guang had completely ignored her, Mrs. Smith immediately turned her attention to Powell and Mika. After all, she was filled with anger at the moment and had to find an outlet to vent it. The two of them seemed to be in a terrible state, and it was the perfect target for her to throw a tantrum at. When Powell and Broom saw that she was still like an angry cow, they could neither laugh nor cry. "Mrs. Smith, please calm down. If we had a choice, we wouldn't want to sit here either." Powell patted his pants as he stood up with the help of the wall. He shrugged and said helplessly. Perhaps it was because he knew that everyone was done for, Powell felt a little relieved. His words gradually showed that he did not take Mrs. Smith seriously. "What do you mean?" Mrs. Smith vaguely felt that something was wrong. Broom saw that she still didn't know anything, and Powell didn't seem to be in the mood to explain, so he said, "Dear Mrs. Smith, everyone here heard what you said to Mr. Wang backstage just now because the microphone was not turned off. This included your racist remarks, as well as your unilateral statement on behalf of the Guinness Association to ask for a break in cooperation with the Wuxia television station." At that moment, some of the sharp-eyed spectators noticed Mrs. Smith. This was great. The crowd, which was already agitated, immediately burst into an uproar. "Fat bitch, get out. So what if I have yellow skin? The girl of the beach. What lousy Guinness. Get lost. We're not playing with you anymore. Who do you think you are? You want to marry our baby Light with that lousy appearance? I've been trying to give birth to baby Light for more than half a year, and I still haven't gotten in line. Why don't you take a piss and look at yourself?" This was a very beautiful, very tall, and very hot woman. Chen Guang silently remembered her face. He was going to discuss life with her after the recording of the program. Other than that, Chen Guang also discovered something else. Human emotions were really a very magical thing. The excitement of the audience in the broadcast hall actually stimulated a lot of faith value. The daily production of faith value of this group of people was about to reach 2,000. There were only about 1,000 people here. What? You all heard it? Yes, Mrs. Smith. Everyone here heard everything you said. On the other side, Mrs. Smith learned from Broom that the sky was falling, and she was frightened by the angry crowd. Her face suddenly turned pale, and her whole body trembled. Of course, she knew that in today's world where even the president was black as a so-called upper-class person, there would be serious consequences for publicizing racial discrimination in public. Moreover, this was China. This time, it was a big deal. She had lost face, and even the reputation of the Guinness Association would be affected. But how did this happen? How did the people outside hear what I said in the broadcasting room? Mrs. Smith looked at the audience standing up from their seats one by one, as if they were going to attack the stage. She was puzzled. Did I get tricked by that Director Wang? She finally remembered the guy's gloomy expression when she was arguing with Director Wang in the studio. She suddenly understood. "You two idiots, why didn't you come in and stop me?" Mrs. Smith raised her leg angrily, wanting to kick Powell. Powell dodged nimbly to the side. "We tried, Miss Mariana, but we couldn't come in." Chen Guang's goal had been achieved, and he didn't want to waste time here. He was just a little worried. It seemed that the recording for the rest of the program would not continue. He only cared about whether his scenes would be broadcasted or not. At this time, Director Wang also walked out. The situation was out of control, and he had to calm it down a little. Otherwise, it would be hard for him to explain himself if it really turned into a violent incident. "Mr. Chin, your program will definitely be broadcasted. Even if we can't finish recording today, we can continue recording China's 5,000 years of unique skills tomorrow. The program will be changed starting from the next episode. What do you think of a new name for our program?" Director Wang said in English in front of Mrs. Smith and the others. Chen Guang gave him a thumbs up. "Very good. Very good. Director Wang, that's not what I meant just now." When Mrs. Smith heard that Director Wang was really going to terminate the collaboration, she immediately rushed over to explain. Old Wang took a step back and kept a distance from the rich lady. Comrade Old Wang took a step back and kept a distance from this lady. "I've already communicated with the senior leaders of our television station about this matter. What the leaders mean is that we respect your association's decision very much. Since your association wants to terminate the cooperation, of course, we won't force you against your will. Furthermore, this matter was proposed by the chairman himself. When the time comes, the senior leaders of our television station will carefully discuss the specific compensation for breach of contract with your association. Now, this matter is no longer up to me. Actually, this matter was not that easy to settle." He was just yelling at Mrs. Smith. However, the rich lady was already in a terrible state of mind. She believed it was true, and her whole body almost went limp. She could probably understand Powell and Bloom's despair just now. "Mr. Chin, we might need you to appease the audience. After all, we are a nation of etiquette." The crowd's attack was getting more and more intense. There were even 3 or 4 people who had broken through the security and were rushing towards Mrs. Smith. These people were all bald. They were indeed die-hard fans of the Anti-Light Alliance. They were really fanatical. Chen Guang nodded. He did not want his fans to get involved in such a big matter. He had a strong backing and was not afraid of anything, but his fans were just ordinary people. "No problem," Chen Guang replied. He took the microphone from Director Wang and walked to the center of the stage. He first stopped the 3 or 4 bald men who were rushing in front of him. All right, that's enough. This D***M fat woman is done for. Don't stay here and cause trouble. Go back and sit down." Chen Guang reached out and pressed the few young men down. "Oh my God. Brother Almighty touched my shoulder. I will never shower again in this life." A bald man with a full beard had tears in his eyes. The other young man, who was also bald but had delicate features, also had stars in his eyes. +1 for not bathing. "I'm so happy that I want to faint." A bald man who looked like a pig butcher burst into tears. Chen Guang silently looked at these 3 jokers. He really wanted to find a mirror to look at himself. To be honest, it was quite sad when he thought about it. I must have a physique that attracts jokers. Why are my fans either tomboys or silly bald men? Can't I have a normal, die-hard fan? After chasing the bald fans away, Chen Guang stood in the middle with the microphone in his hand. Quiet, everyone be quiet. Heh, this was really amazing. The crowd that Dong Qing and Zhu Jun couldn't suppress actually calmed down after a few words from Chen Guang. The power of idols was really amazing. On the other side, Chief Wang saw that Chen Guang had calmed down and felt at ease. He said to Mrs. Smith, "Mrs. Smith, go back to the guest seats and rest. No matter what, let's try to finish recording the show today, okay? There are still so many people waiting in the contestants' lounge. You don't want to become an international joke because of this, do you? Wouldn't it be quite embarrassing if word of this got out?" Comrade Old Wang's heart ached. He had been a program team director for many years. Although he was not always respectful when dealing with Powell and Bloom, most of the time he was indeed a head lower than them. When he met an association member like the district chairman, he would basically have to bow and scrape. He had never been as unyielding as he was today. It was really sweeping away the gloom and making him feel good. Powell and Bloom also knew that it was meaningless to continue like this, so they tried to persuade him to finish recording today's show. Other things could be discussed in private. There was no such thing as a grudge that couldn't be resolved. The matter was still Chen Guang. At most, they would just give in to him and everything could be discussed. After a short while, the noisy studio finally settled down again. Originally, Chen Guang had planned to leave after recording his segment, but he stayed a little longer. It was because of Chief Wang's request that he stayed to hold down the fort. It was definitely not because of the female fan who wanted to give birth to his baby. Chapter 686. Mariana Smith was sitting in the guest seat. The whispers behind her made her feel like she was sitting on pins and needles. She felt that those people must be scolding her. The more she thought about it, the angrier and more wronged she felt. Ever since Mr. Smith died and she inherited Smith's jewelry, she had never felt so wronged. She couldn't hide what had happened today. So many people were watching and listening. She could imagine what kind of criticism she would receive when the news spread to the United States. As the chairman of the Asia-Pacific region of the Guinness Association, not only did she not make any contribution to the development of the association, but she also made a fool out of herself because of her own selfish desires. She even used racial slurs in public. This was 100 times more serious than a male model who had a bad personal life. This would even affect the reputation of the entire Smith's jewelry. She would lose her position as the chairman of the Asia-Pacific region of the Guinness Association, and she might even be kicked out of the upper class. How did it become like this? She had no idea what the problem was. Everything had been normal yesterday. She had just fallen in love with an internet celebrity from Wuxia, and he had rejected her without giving her any face. Then she had tried to suppress him and teach him a lesson. She had even called the ghost hand Hiroto Aoyama. How did it become like this in the end? The price of being willful seemed to be too heavy. Her mind was in a trance. Her heart began to ache inside her plump body. It seemed that she was under too much psychological pressure. However, she didn't realize it. She was still immersed in the matter. I didn't do anything wrong. Something must have gone wrong. Mr. Aoyama? Mr. Aoyama? The competition is over. Please leave. Everyone else has left. We have to move the table away. It turned out that Hiroto Aoyama was still in the same position. His hands were pressed on the long table. He was still trying to wake up from the nightmare. Don't touch me, devil. The staff pushed Hiroto Aoyama lightly. Then, the ghost hand from Japan screamed as if he had been stung by a wasp. Mariana heard the shout from the stage. She looked up and saw Hiroto Aoyama's pale face, purple lips, trembling hands, and cold sweat all over his face. In a trance, Mrs. Smith's mind suddenly became clear. Right, things had turned out this way because Ghost Hand, whom she had high hopes for, had suffered a crushing defeat at the hands of Chen Guang. If he won, Chen Guang could only leave with his tail between his legs, or kneel at his feet and beg for his forgiveness, and then ask him to give him another chance. It's all this trash's fault. She immediately stood up from her seat. Hiroto Aoyama, you trash. Her plump body was like a fat dinosaur as she charged at Hiroto Aoyama. She had completely lost control of her emotions. Hiroto Aoyama turned around and stared at her blankly. He stared at the person who had saved his life, but for some reason, his mind was filled with the disgusting scene that made him kneel in the toilet and vomit for an entire night. This was a terrible nightmare. She threw herself at me again. I hope I can survive this time and not suffocate to death. Wait, if it's a dream, why didn't I reject her? Am I to be tormented by her in my dreams? F***ck off. You are a filthy, ugly, disgusting, fat woman. Every inch of fat and crease on your body makes me want to puke. Mrs. Smith was stunned. After a short silence, she became even angrier. You, go to hell. She bared her fangs and brandished her claws at Hiroto Aoyama. However, Hiroto Aoyama was no longer afraid. He slapped Mrs. Smith hard in the face and pushed her shoulders hard with both hands, causing her to fall to the ground. I've had enough. I've had enough of you. Hiroto Aoyama summoned the courage that never existed in reality. He looked down at Mrs. Smith, who was paralyzed on the ground. Mariana Smith raised her head and looked at Hiroto Aoyama blankly. She was caught off guard by the sudden burst of courage from this weak puppet. Wrinkles? This ghost hand sure knows how to play. Oh my God, how can there be such a disgusting woman in the world? Is the meaning of her life to constantly disgust others? Doesn't she have any self-awareness? The whispers in the studio, which had finally settled down, boiled up again. Although Mrs. Smith didn't understand what they were talking about, she could feel the disdain in everyone's eyes. Her hair was disheveled, and she was in a sorry state. Her eyes were blank, her breathing was getting faster, and her head was buzzing. Even a piece of trash like you dares to disobey me? Hiroto Aoyama didn't seem to be satisfied yet. He took a deep breath and spat at Mrs. Smith's face. She had been holding these words in her heart for almost 10 years. Even if it was just a dream, it was good enough. Thick phlegm was stuck on Mrs. Smith's forehead. She was about to break down. Look at your ugly face. Do you know how disgusting it is when you're on top of me? Shut up. Don't you have money? What do you have other than money? If it wasn't for your money, do you think I would care about you? Bastard. You bastard. Linda, kill this bastard for me. Mrs. Smith began to call for her assistant. I always thought that your old husband was suffocated to death by you. You. Mrs. Smith pointed at Hiroto Aoyama with trembling hands. Linda's assistant had already rushed over with 2 bodyguards. They had to shut this guy up. At this moment, Mrs. Smith felt a sharp pain in her heart. Her eyes rolled back, and she fainted just like that. Linda screamed, Mrs. Smith has a heart attack. Quick! Stop this idiot Hiroto Aoyama. At the same time, the poor assistant began to rummage through her purse. Where's the medicine? Where's the medicine? She couldn't find the bottle after searching for a long time. She simply flipped the purse over, and the contents were scattered on the ground. There was still no medicine. She didn't bring any medicine. Mrs. Smith had always had a heart attack, but it hadn't happened for a long time. She actually forgot to bring the medicine. Send her to the hospital. On the other side, Hiroto Aoyama had already been punched to the ground by the 2 bodyguards. The other employees of Smith Jewelry also rushed up to him and held him down. The loud noise in his head gradually subsided, and he finally came back to his senses. He first looked at the uproar on the stage, then at Marianne Smith, who had fallen to the side, Linda, who was angry and anxious, and the other craftsman he was familiar with. He gradually came to his senses. I'm not dreaming. This is all reality. Oh my God, look at what I've done. The sudden change took another 10 minutes. Mrs. Smith had already been rushed to the hospital, and Hiroto Aoyama was also surrounded by bodyguards. The people of Smith Jewelry had come in aggressively, but left in an extremely embarrassing manner. Fortunately, the audience did not have any objections. Although the time was delayed, it was more exciting than watching a movie. Mr. Powell, shall we continue recording the show? Director Wang asked the 2 Guinness staff members who stayed behind. Let's record. What can we do? What about you, Mr. Chen Guang? Powell looked at Chen Guang worriedly. He was very concerned about Chen Guang's opinion. Chen Guang waved his hand indifferently. It has nothing to do with me. I've finished my work. Now I'm just a mascot. You guys just go about your business. What happened to Mrs. Smith could not cause any ripples in his heart. He did not do anything from the beginning to the end. That fat woman was just making a fuss. She deserved a heart attack. She deserved it. None of my business. Bored to death, Chen Guang sat in the studio, but his thoughts had already flown to another place. The faith value of the pencil sharpening world was in place. He just had to wait for the show to go on TV and reap a big harvest. Now, the focus of his work had to shift. Just now, Yu Hong had sent a text saying that the piano show had been finalized. It would be performed directly at the National Gallery of Art next Wednesday. This time, the television broadcast would be handled by CCTV, and the online broadcast would be handled directly by Shao Kong. The negotiations were also ongoing for foreign platforms. As for advertising sponsorships, they were not considered for the time being. Everything looked great, except for the fact that the time interval was as long as 7 days. It was simply perfect. He was used to busy days, but suddenly he had 7 days of free time. He felt a little melancholy with nothing to do. If it was someone else, they would probably practice hard for 15 hours a day if they were to hold such a high-standard piano show a week later. But this was completely meaningless to the strongest humanoid player in history, Chen Guang. Do I have to waste 7 days in Beijing? Just the thought of it was scary. Wouldn't I be bored to death? I'm a man who's going to become the master of the trichiliocosm. I'm also in a hurry to perfect my body so that I can quickly practice the painting scroll. Otherwise, how am I supposed to keep up with Wenwen's pace? During the previous military exercise, he heard that the conflict between her and the poison sect and the dark sect was getting worse. Who knows, there might be a final battle on that day. Should he just be a spectator then? Moreover, since the poison sect and the dark sect dared to provoke the Wen family, they couldn't possibly not have any backup plans, right? Wenwen might not even be able to win. Most importantly, in order to cover up the details of the poisoning incident at the hot pot restaurant, 7 families and 25 people's lives had been wiped out. This debt had not been settled yet. If he did not account for these things, Chen Guang's thoughts would never be at ease. He himself might not be absolutely safe. Just like the last time, the other party had randomly sent 2 bone force martial artists to chase after him. In the end, he was lucky enough to escape, and it was all thanks to the gift of Wind God's kick from the Holy Grail. What if those scumbags had evil thoughts again and simply sent bone force martial artists? What would he do? Lie on the ground and wait for death? This was also the key reason why he was so anxious and crazy to improve his strength. He was really anxious. Chapter 687. He watched the others challenge Guinness out of boredom while holding his chin and thinking hard. At present, the biggest shortcoming of the 7 perfect cups, the faith value of the pencil sharpening world, depended on today's show. The piano world also depended on the joint performance in the National Gallery of Art 7 days later. If possible, he would make the show in 7 days a global event. He would use even crazier skills than the left and right hands concerts so that other piano lovers would not have the courage to compete with him. It doesn't matter if you guys ridicule my artistic level. There is no first place in literature and no second place in martial arts. I understand all this. What I want is just the title of the strongest technique, that's all. The other darts world and the sword tower world had already exploded in faith value. The racing world was almost at 30,000. There was not much room for improvement. The pile driver Little Six had a daily production of 38,000 since the birth of the statue of God. So, now that there was still faith value and room for expansion, it seemed that the only thing left was Little Seven with a daily production of 18,000. He silently clenched his fists and looked at his hands. He remembered the process of the birth of the statue of God and suddenly felt a headache. It seemed that only one person playing the piano twice could not continue to leave a deep impression on others. He had to do something else. At least he had to let people know that his hands were the strongest in the world, that they were the most explosive, and that they must be the most perfect pair of arms in the world. So what should he do? Participate in the weightlifting competition? To be honest, if he were to lift weights in his current state, he would most likely sprain his back. His hands and feet were perfect, but he had not trained the other parts of his upper body. Besides, lifting weights did not prove that strength was the greatest, right? The Qilin arm also involved many other factors, such as explosive power. What should he do? The thought of this made his headache even worse. The recording of the show would take about 4 hours. In the middle, some parts of the show that were not very effective would be cut, and some unexpected scenes would be abandoned. It's finally over. I don't know if there will be another episode of this unlucky show. Powell and Bloom walked down from the stage side by side, talking. They were a little dispirited. Bloom sighed. God knows. Why don't we go talk to Mr. Chen now? Maybe he will give in a little? Wait, I have a call. It's from Linda. Powell pulled Bloom back. Bloom urged, hurry up, Mr. Chen is leaving. Powell? What's wrong with you? What are you doing? Your phone fell to the ground. Powell slowly lowered his hand and looked at Bloom with a pale face. Bloom, Mrs. Smith is dead. What? Speak louder. Bloom picked his ears. He had heard it clearly, but he hoped he had misheard. I say, Mrs. Smith is dead. As soon as she arrived at the hospital, she entered the emergency room. However, on the way there, her heart stopped for a short while. She had too many complications. She was too fat, and her heart was already riddled with holes. She's dead now. What is the hospital doing? They're already here, but they can't save him? Bloom still couldn't believe it. Powell nodded. Yes, we tried for more than 3 hours but to no avail. On the other side, Qin Guang, who was about to leave after greeting Chief Wang, also heard their conversation. Chief Wang, I think I heard those two say, Mrs. Smith is dead? Qin Guang tried to ask. How could Comrade Old Wang believe that? He chuckled and said, Ha, Mr. Qin, you really know how to joke. How could someone die from anger so easily? You're really black-bellied to actually curse someone else. *CK. She's really dead. A minute later, Comrade Old Wang could no longer laugh. Even Qin Guang was dumbfounded. Although Su Tao was hateful, wasn't it a little too much for him to die so easily? If you have heart disease, don't be so troublesome, okay? I didn't do anything. You've been courting death all along. Now that you're dead, don't turn into a malicious spirit and come looking for trouble with me. Therefore, people should not be too pretentious. They should also pay attention to maintaining healthy living habits, exercising hard, and paying attention to their figure. Once a person gets fat, it's easy for them to have all sorts of problems. Her ability to withstand pressure was so poor, and she came to provoke me. Now that she's dead from anger, is it my fault? Forget it, I'll go back and burn some yellow paper for her as a souvenir. Some things were just so unimaginable. It was obvious that Mrs. Smith's heart disease was not something new. It had been accumulating for a long time, and today's incident was just a prelude. Things piled up one by one, and finally led to the fact that she had died in the emergency room. If it had been another place, another reason, another time, she might still have died like this. Unfortunately, everything had happened today. It seemed sudden, but in reality, it was inevitable. Mr. Qin. Powell rolled his dead fish eyes and wanted to say something to Qin Guang. Qin Guang jumped back. Don't look at me. This has nothing to do with me. What did I do? I only participated in the Guinness conference, won, and was done with it. Don't blame it on me. I'm not going to take the blame. I didn't even touch her a few times from the beginning to the end. I didn't say anything to her either. The one who pushed her down wasn't me, it was that Japanese. He definitely could not take the blame. Although old Master Guang was stubborn, he was not stupid. Powell was embarrassed. That's true. Everyone was watching. Actually, there was nothing wrong with Hiroshi Aoyama. It was all an accident. That's enough. I don't care how you deal with this mess. I'm leaving. Goodbye. Oh no, don't see me again. Hey, Mr. Qin. Powell wanted to say something, but Qin Guang had already disappeared. After a long time, Powell stomped his feet helplessly. I wanted to remind him to be careful of the Daoist family's revenge. Although there are many coincidences in this incident, and we are deeply sorry about Mrs. Smith's death, we will definitely report the truth when we get back. Mr. Chen wants to stay out of it, but this incident started because of him. The Daoist girl will not let it go so easily. Director Wang was curious. What does Mrs. Smith have to do with the Daoist family? Is that family very powerful? Before she married Smith, beside him, Broom kept coughing. Powell realized that he had said too much and quickly shut up. Since there's nothing else, Mr. Wang, we'll leave first. Mrs. Smith must still have a lot of things to do. The headquarters will probably send a new Asia-Pacific chairman in a few days. We'll talk then. The two foreigners ran as fast as they could as they spoke. Why are you talking so much to him? Broom muttered. Powell sighed. Can't you tell? Mr. Chen is a big shot. So what? No matter how big a shot he is there any use in his death? That's true. Powell, we're just small fries. We have to know our place. Although Powell was usually the talkative one, the one who really made the decisions was Broom. Chen Guang ran out of the central TV building alone. It was raining outside, as if it was mourning for the fat woman who had died in a foreign land. But he could not say that he was sad. After all, there was nothing about Marianne Smith that was likable. But he could not deny that his mood was affected. He had even forgotten about the tall, crazy fan who was going to give birth to his child. Hiroyuki Aoyama would definitely meet a tragic end. Even if he was not directly responsible, he was the one who had triggered Mrs. Smith's illness and pushed her to the ground. Actually, he was also a pitiful guy. He had lived like a tortoise all his life. He had finally been brave in his dream, but ended up like this. Perhaps this was his fate from the moment he had chosen to accept Mrs. Smith's sponsorship. It was all fate. In the past, Chen Guang did not believe in fate. But after seeing the bell of fate in the world in a cup, he had no choice but to believe it. Luckily, he had the bell of fate. If he really encountered a dead end, he could just ring it again. The aftereffects were scary, but there was always a chance for him to choose. But then again, Mrs. Smith was so rich. If she died in Wuxia, the impact would not be small, right? Forget it. Why should I think about it? It has nothing to do with me anyway. Mr. Chen, you look a little absent-minded. Yang Shi, who was sent by Big Beard Deng, looked at Chen Guang worriedly. Chapter 688. Very well, then why don't you try to act Ali in the boxing ring? There's no need for lines. There are no lines in the boxing ring. Just act out his confidence, stubbornness, and unyielding spirit. Of course, the eyes in the boxing ring must be aggressive. It would be better if you also have some professional knowledge, such as the butterfly steps. Yang Shi said tentatively. He also knew that his request might be a bit difficult. After all, in order to act out the role of Ali, Will Smith also went through a long period of learning. It was impossible for Chen Guang to act it out immediately. Of course, this was also Yang Shi's purpose. He deliberately found a difficult role for Chen Guang to embarrass him and let him know how powerful it was. In addition, the first thing a real professional actor learned when entering the industry was to release himself. This was a public place, and professional actors could quickly get into the mood here. But Chen Guang was just an ordinary person. No matter how terrifying the theoretical knowledge he had shown before, it could not hide the fact that he had once dragged the entire Rivers and Mountains crew into the sun for an afternoon with embarrassment cancer. Therefore, in fact, Yang Shi's request buried two traps for Chen Guang. Letting an ordinary person act out a role in the boxing ring in such a public place could stimulate his sense of shame to the greatest extent, but it was also destined that he would act poorly. The worse he performed, the better. In this way, from tomorrow on, he could tie up this dishonest investor and male lead, so that he would willingly accept his closed-door special training. Don't look at little brother Yang Shi, who is always laughing and joking all day long. In fact, he is also a very dark guy. Chen Guang stood up and took off the hat on his head, revealing his shiny bald head. He looked around, and the people sitting nearby all looked at him curiously. Then he did not say much, just smiled at everyone, and then lowered his head and said, "Brother Yang, watch carefully." Yang Shi sat on the chair, crossed his legs, and looked at him with great interest. He really did not expect that this guy would really act without saying anything. Thinking back to the afternoon when he had almost broken down in order to train Qinguang's acting skills, Yang Shi couldn't help but sigh. My brother Qinguang, how can you be so brave? I'm not talking nonsense with you. The gap between theoretical knowledge and practice is not just a layer of yarn, but a mountain. No matter how well prepared you are, you still need a guide like me to take you across the mountains. Indeed, geniuses exist in this world, but they are definitely not you. How am I supposed to pacify him if it gets too awkward? Forget it, with my understanding of him, he's a thick-skinned person. At worst, he'll just pay the money and run. Seeing Qinguang close his eyes and start preparing his character, Yang Shi's mood gradually rose. He really wanted to know what kind of performance a mysterious actor, who was rich in theoretical knowledge but lacking in practical experience, could perform in public all of a sudden. Suddenly, Qinguang opened his eyes. There was a trace of lingering confusion in his eyes, and a slightly bitter and resentful expression gradually condensed on his face. Yang Shi still maintained the posture of sitting on the chair, looking at Qinguang with a rather playful expression. Sure enough, as I expected, my cancer of embarrassment is about to break out. You're a boxing champion who stands in the boxing ring. What the hell is this bitter and resentful expression of yours, as if everyone owes you tens of thousands of dollars? Then, Qinguang completely ignored the interference of Yang Shi's eyes. His eyes gradually focused and looked forward. His back slightly arched, his hands raised in front of him, and he took a slightly unprofessional defensive stance of a boxer. Yang Shi suddenly couldn't laugh anymore. He thought of a scene in his mind, and also recalled some of the life of boxing champion Ali. There was no doubt that boxing champion Ali was a very complicated person. His life was full of ups and downs. In his career as a professional boxer, he stood in the boxing ring and shouldered too many things that did not belong to boxing. He represented the black people who struggled to walk in that environment at that time. In his professional career, in addition to fighting to the death with opponents in the boxing ring, he also had to face too much pressure from his skin color and religious beliefs outside the ring. He used much more effort than ordinary people, as well as an even more stubborn and strong personality, and finally achieved brilliant achievements in the entire boxing ring under the enormous pressure. But there was no doubt that he rarely felt happy. When he was young, he always felt that the world owed him something. He had clearly won the Olympic gold medal for the United States, and he was a national hero, but he couldn't even eat a simple lunch in a white restaurant. He angrily threw the gold medal into the sea. The unfair treatment made him even more resentful of the world. With this suppressed anger, he threw himself into the professional boxing arena. He used his angry arrogance to vent the anger in his heart unscrupulously inside and outside the boxing ring. He shouldered too much honor, but his skin color brought him endless trouble. It was as if no matter how much he achieved, he would only be inferior to others. He began to be confused, sometimes angry, sometimes self-doubting, and he didn't even know how to prove himself. In his long career, he had done many things to eliminate racial barriers, and he had witnessed the emergence of the first black president with his own eyes. But after all, he was confused, and it lasted for a long time. The boxing champion Ali played by Will Smith would obviously never be able to play the boxing champion's true professional level. He was an actor, not a boxer. But Will Smith very well captured the mood of the boxing champion when he was young. At this time, Qinguang was also playing the young boxing champion who was angry and confused, but hidden in the confusion was stubbornness, and stubbornness made him arrogant to the point of madness. All of a sudden, Qinguang made his move. His footwork was clumsy, but it didn't seem like it at all. Qinguang hopped around the coffee table on his tiptoes. Yang Shi clenched his fists tighter and tighter. He finally understood the confusion in Qinguang's eyes at the beginning. The scenes in the movie gradually emerged in his mind, and unconsciously he merged with the Qinguang in front of him. He seemed to see Will Smith again, or perhaps the lousy Ali that was played. Yang Shi's breathing gradually became rapid. What is this situation? Suddenly, The leaping Chen Guang took an extra step forward with his right foot, leaned his upper body to the right, and swung his right hook fiercely from the bottom to the top. But what Yang Shi paid most attention to was the look in Chen Guang's eyes. The moment he punched, the confusion disappeared, and in its place was a decisive and indomitable momentum. Yang Shi stood up abruptly and took a step back. The whole process took less than 30 seconds, but he really did it. In this coffee shop full of strangers and strange looks, he acted like Will Smith's version of Muhammad Ali in the movie. Chen Guang continued walking, and the anger in his eyes grew stronger. He was clearly just punching the air, but it was as if Sonny Liston was really standing in front of him, the former boxing champion who had fallen under his iron fists. The strange looks in the coffee shop also changed. It was really strange. At first, they clearly thought that this person was a madman, but why did it seem like they were watching a real boxing match now? Where was his opponent? Where was he? That's not right. He might be an actor, and he's acting on the set. Then are we all extras? The scariest thing about the so-called world-class acting skills was not just that Chen Guang could put himself into the world of the movie. When he unleashed it to the extreme, the invisible world seemed to use him as the origin and gradually spread out, enveloping the people and objects in the space around him into his world, his domain. This was the true horror of the highest level of acting skills. I am an actor. I am the world. Welcome to my world. The tables in the coffee shop turned into boxing rings. In the air, Sonny Liston was retreating step by step, and Chen Guang's fists were closing in. Finally, Chen Guang's body came to a stop as he threw out a heavy punch with an explosion in the air. Everyone was hallucinating. Sonny Liston's phantom seemed to appear in front of him, and then he collapsed. The newly crowned king raised his hands high, waiting to enjoy the cheers of the world. Chen Guang looked back, with the frankness and dominance of a young man. Godly acting skills. Yang Shi screamed in his heart. His breathing almost stopped, and he even wanted to kneel down just like that. Roar! The dozens of people in the coffee shop couldn't help but cheer for him in unison, even though he had clearly only defeated the air. Yang Shi's body went limp, and he sat on the ground. Before seeing it with his own eyes, he really didn't believe that anyone in the world could reach such a level of acting skills. If anyone else had done the same thing here, the end result would only be a cancer of embarrassment. But it made everyone in the coffee shop live in his play. Oh my God, brother. Are you acting as Ollie? That's right, I know, you're acting as Ollie. Although I haven't seen this movie in 10 years, thank you, you brought back memories in my heart. At this moment, a strong black man sitting near the two stood up excitedly. It's too similar, really too similar. Brother, how did you do it? Although your boxing skills are very rusty, and your butterfly steps aren't professional, you really remind me of Will. He's the actor I admire the most, and Ali is the teacher I admire the most. Thank you for showing me the two of them in such a vivid way. You must be the best actor in the world. Chen Guang smiled and cupped his hands at the black man. Ah, thank you, buddy. Come, let's make friends. Chen Guang raised his coffee, pretending to be wine, and clinked glasses with the people at the table. Having seen many pretentious, international friends, like Mariana and Powell, Chen Guang had a good impression of this honest black man. The other black man next to him seemed to be in a daze. No one knew what he was thinking. Chapter 689. How was it? Brother Yang, did you do well? After greeting everyone, Chen Guang sat back in his chair and winked at Yang Shi. Yang Shi was stunned for a long time before he recovered. He put his hands on the table and said, "Luckily you're a man. Otherwise, I'm afraid I'll fall in love with you. Brother, you're invincible. I don't want to ask you how you did it. I can't learn it in my lifetime. What happened to you? Are you possessed by a god? Unbelievable, unbelievable, Max Weber. So, are you still worried about my acting skills? Don't talk nonsense. You're mocking me. But if you go back and tell Uncle Big Beard, he probably won't believe you. You forgot to record it." Yang Shi was stunned. "Yeah. But don't expect me to do it again. It's so F*** King awkward." F*** CK, you actually feel awkward? I thought you didn't feel it at all. Chen Guang shrugged. I don't feel it when I'm acting, but after I'm done, it all comes back. I'm almost at the terminal stage of embarrassment. Luckily, no one came to slap my face. Otherwise, I'd flip the table. You're really fast at getting into character and out of character. That's for sure. Please call me Best Actor Chen from now on. Forget it. Even if Director Deng doesn't know what's going on, it's already happened. It's good that I understand it. It feels so good. I really want to see with my own eyes how you scared Director Deng on the day of filming. I was a little prepared today, but you still scared me. Finally, after dealing with Yang Shi, Chen Guang could finally relax. The young man was completely kneeling on the ground. It seemed like he wouldn't be able to recover for a while. Although Chen Guang knew that his unreserved show-off would have an impact on his outlook on life, he could only spread his hands. The old man didn't want to either. You forced him to. Otherwise, if you really followed Big Beard's instructions and pestered me all day, what would I do? Chen Guang finished his coffee in 2 or 3 gulps. Just as he was about to run away, the middle-aged black man came over with a glass of wine. Sir, can we talk? Huh? Hello, how can I help you? Chen Guang put down his glass. Yang Shi had already stood up to pay the bill. Well, my name is Bonner Pierce. You can call me Mr. Pierce. I'm a professional boxing coach. Chen Guang looked at the man with great interest. He did not expect that a random act of Ali in a coffee shop could attract a professional boxing coach. The muscular black man from before also came up and said proudly, Mr. Pierce is very famous in North America. He used to be Mr. Mayweather's technical consultant. Chen Guang's interest was immediately piqued. Of course, he knew about Mayweather. He was a super famous boxing champion and was known as one of the greatest boxing champions of the century. His fights were worth tens of millions of dollars. If this black guy wasn't bragging, then Pierce was really a big shot. Hello, my name is Chen Guang. Nice to meet you. Chen Guang reached out and shook hands with Pierce. Although the middle-aged black man was old, his arms were exceptionally thick. His palms were also a size larger than Chen Guang's. After the two shook hands, he seemed to be deliberately exerting more strength. Chen Guang remained calm. However much strength you use, I will use the same amount of strength. Ambition does not depend on age. Strength does not depend on the size of the arms. You have to know that you are facing the strongest arm in history. After a while, Pierce's face began to turn red. He was shocked beyond words. Although he was now a coach, when he was a professional boxer, he was also famous for his iron fists. He had once won a heavyweight championship belt. Even now, he still kept training. His absolute strength was not much worse than when he was young. How could he be suppressed by Mr. Chen's thin arms when shaking hands? Mr. Pierce, we've been shaking hands for too long. Chen Guang saw that Pierce was so tired and reminded him. Pierce awkwardly let go of his hand. His dark palms had been squeezed so hard by Chen Guang that his bones creaked when he moved slightly. When old Pierce recovered, Chen Guang asked, Mr. Pierce, what's the matter? Just say it. You look like a busy man. Pierce looked at Chen Guang again. Earlier he had felt that this young man's fists were strong. Now that he tried it, he realized that this guy was not just an ordinary person. He was so strong that it made people's hair stand on end. With the body of a lightweight or at most a welterweight, the strength in his palms was able to suppress a heavyweight boxing champion who was obviously a size larger than him. What a rare genius! Imagine the scene of a lightweight fighter blasting out a heavyweight's power in the boxing ring. It was simply a killing machine, okay? Mr. Chen, it's like this. Just now, you briefly imitated the scene of Muhammad Ali's fight. It is undeniable that you are a very, very good actor. Although your steps and posture are still lacking, there should be no actor who can do it better than you. Pierce sorted out his thoughts and said, Chen Guang asked Yang Shi to order 2 glasses of wine. He had roughly guessed Pierce's intentions. Anyway, he had nothing to do in the afternoon, so there was no harm in chatting with him. Thank you for your compliment, Mr. Pierce. I am indeed not a professional boxer. Of course, I am also not a professional. Chen Guang looked at Yang Shi's resentful eyes again. Well, I am indeed an actor. Mr. Chen, to be honest, being an actor is a waste of your talent. Has no one ever told you how terrifying your fists are? Pierce had the art of speaking. He deliberately stirred up his emotions, making them impassioned and indignant. Yang Shi, who was next to him, disagreed. Hey, I don't like what you said. What do you mean by a waste of talent? Do you know what kind of actor Chen Guang is? Okay, brother Yang, don't make a fuss here. I won't jump ship. How can I not act in a movie that I spent money on? Chen Guang said this in Chinese. Yang Shi thought about it and felt at ease. He has 60% of the shares. Why should I be so nervous? Just 2 days ago, he couldn't wait for Chen Guang to quit. But at this moment, his mentality had completely changed. It was Chen Guang's less than 5 minutes of live performance that led to this fundamental change. On the other side, Pierce saw that Chen Guang did not respond to his incitement and was disappointed. He thought that Chen Guang might be a famous actor and was not particularly interested in being a professional boxer. He decided to add fuel to the fire. Mr. Chen, don't think that I am joking. My eyes have never been wrong. When you punched with a non-standard posture, I actually heard the wind from the friction between the air and your fist. Pierce became more and more excited as he spoke. You are a natural-born boxer. Since you can play Ali so vividly, you must have some understanding of professional boxing, right? Believe me, as long as you go through my top professional training, I can make you the king of the boxing ring. You have a daunting punch and can even dominate the boxing rings below the middleweight or light heavyweight weight class. You can achieve even more than Mayweather. I have a high degree of confidence in helping you achieve this. Right now, your weakness is the strength of your waist and abdomen, but your legs and hands will be your most advantageous weapons. Your dynamic vision and nerve reaction may still need high-intensity training. But it doesn't matter. I am the most professional in this area. You are born with talent. I have confidence that you can punch more than 600 kilograms. That's right, you Chinese prefer to use kilograms. Imagine you are invincible in the middleweight or lightweight boxing ring, using the heavy cannon that only the heavyweight boxing champion can hit. Chen Guang nearly burst into laughter. Why is this black bro so frank and straightforward? Although Chen Guang knew that it wasn't impossible for him to achieve what Chen Guang said, he still felt that Chen Guang must have been trained in a multi-level marketing organization for Chen Guang to brag so much in their first meeting. In addition, you don't actually need to train me. My current punching force is 800 kilograms. 600 kilograms is nothing. Of course, Pierce's eyes were indeed sharp. He could see that Zhang Heng's weakness was the waist and abdomen. No wonder he was a top coach. If it wasn't for the fact that it would take a long time to become a top boxer and step onto the world stage, Chen Guang would have been tempted by Pierce's words. After all, as long as he could become the world boxing champion, it would indeed help the Qilin statue absorb a lot of faith. But the effect was too slow. Chen Guang could not wait. Even if he went to the United States with him now, registered as an athlete, started training, and fought his way up, it would take at least a few months for him to get a gold belt. Mr. Pierce, I understand your good intentions and thank you for your appreciation, but now Mr. Chen, don't reject me so directly. I can see that you're very young. Young people shouldn't make decisions for their own lives so quickly. There are many choices in life. When I was young, I almost became a Hollywood action actor, but in the end, I chose the path of professional boxing. It's really extraordinarily wonderful. The feeling of becoming stronger will make you addicted to it. Oh, right, this is my business card. Can I have your email address? We can keep in touch. Pierce was really an excellent lobbyist. Once the person he persuaded showed that he wanted to reject his suggestion directly, he made a decisive decision and planned to take a roundabout way. He knew that Chinese people cared about their reputation. If he wanted to change his words, he would not be able to show it. Today, he had to leave enough space for himself. He would be more prepared next time. Well, anyway, thank you very much for your good intentions. If I have a chance to go to the United States in the future, I will visit you. Chen Guang was polite to him. This was the thick black theory of the Chinese people. After exchanging contact information, Pierce and the others were ready to leave. If we were not in a hurry to go back to China to participate in the arm wrestling competition, I would really like to find a local club and have a more in-depth talk with you. Please believe me. I have never been wrong. You are a real genius. But it doesn't matter. I will come to you after a while. No matter which city in China you are in, I will come. Pierce said and pointed to his eyes. He was not bragging. He really had a pair of discerning eyes. The few young people with him today were the young boxers he had discovered. These young people looked stronger than Qin Guang, but he was sure that none of them could throw a punch as hard as Qin Guang. In Pierce's eyes, explosive power was an inborn talent. This was especially important for professional boxers. It represented the upper limit of a person. Evidently, the upper limit of Qin Guang's punch was so high that it made everyone's hair stand on end. But it was a pity that he was already a successful actor. He was not an ordinary person who was eager to be successful. It must be difficult for him to give up his current life and become a professional boxer. Top professional boxers were very profitable, and Chinese artists were also very profitable. But it was much easier. He had heard that outstanding young actors in China could easily earn more than $10 million. If it was him, he would also be reluctant to give up his acting career. It must be a long way to persuade him to go to the United States with me. But I will not give up so easily. Pierce was still in a daze until he boarded the plane to Detroit with Qin Guang. Strange? What did I say earlier? Why did Feng Yu decide to fly to Detroit with me? Let me think carefully. What did we talk about? What happened back then? 2 hours ago. Mr. Pierce, what did you say earlier? Arm wrestling competition? The annual World Arm Wrestling Competition will be held in Detroit this year. The day after tomorrow, the world's strongest men will gather together. This is a grand event in the world of arm wrestling. Mr. Chin, are you interested? Are there any rules for the registration? There are more than 10,000 contestants. The contestants will register on the spot and compete on the spot. If they win, they will advance to the next round. Of course, the ones who could truly win the championship were the publicly acknowledged powerhouses. I was also a strong contender for the championship when I was young. Now, I am going there to let the youngsters see the world and see if I can find some good seedlings. Interesting. This is interesting. Qin Guang's eyes became brighter and brighter. Pierce felt his eyes were dazzling. This was truly a case of wearing out iron shoes in fruitless searching, only to find it by chance. What better way to prove that his arms were invincible than to win the World Arm Wrestling Competition and become the undisputed king of arm wrestling? This was simply a shortcut to the heavens placed in front of him, okay? Thinking about his thin arms, thin legs, and small body, he ended up rubbing those strong men who were as strong as elephants on the ground. At the same time, he mobilized the Internet Water Army and stirred up this matter. If he did a good job, wouldn't he become a Buddha? Then, Mr. Pierce, I will see you on the plane. Qin Guang said goodbye to Pierce and quickly went to find his connections. Time was tight and he had to use some extreme measures. Fortunately, his identity as the director of the Guangdong General Administration was extremely special, and he could go abroad at any time. When he had just been appointed to this position, his long-term visa had been handled through special channels. He didn't know which old man had personally handled it and used the highest level of connections. As for the plane tickets, the plane that Pierce and the others were originally going to take had no empty seats. Through the coordination of the airline's executives, they forcibly moved a seat for him. After that, he boarded the plane to Detroit with Pierce. This was truly a capricious trip that could be taken away at will. Qin Guang finally realized the benefits of being a big shot. The convenience of traveling was not something that ordinary people could imagine. If he was still a poor loser, he would not be able to board the plane so quickly. Pierce and the others were sitting in front of him. Qin Guang had discussed with them that after arriving in Detroit, he only needed to travel with them. The day after tomorrow and the day after that, he would go to the arm wrestling competition to show off. After that, he would immediately rush back and take part in the piano performance. He was really defeated by his own wit. Hello, passengers. The plane is about to take off. To ensure flight safety, Please check whether your phones, tablets, and other electronic devices are turned off. Thank you for your cooperation." The sweet bilingual voice of the flight attendant came from the cabin. Chen Guang quickly turned off his popcorn 5S. Strange, why can't I get through to Mr. Chen's phone? Director Wang of the Guinness Conference Program team of Central TV's Department 13 stared at his phone with a blank expression. Because of the sudden situation during the program recording, he had been busy for 3 to 4 hours. After he was done, he finally remembered to call Chen Guang to remind him that Powell had mentioned something about the Tempest family. Although he did not know what exactly was going on, it was reasonable to inform him. But Chen Guang's phone was already turned off, and he could not get through to him. Forget it, I'll send him a text and inform Xiao Lu from Tianguang Brokerage. That should be foolproof, right? Comrade Wang said. Maybe, probably there won't be any trouble? It's only been a few hours. He can't be flying to America already, right? Doesn't he have a piano performance in a few days? We just talked about this at the meeting. What? What did you say? Mr. Chen went to America. He just boarded the plane? What the F***CK? How could he just fly away like that? 2 minutes later, the Fruit 7 that Comrade Wang had just bought fell to the ground and smashed into pieces. Chen Guang lay in the first-class seat and tidied up the backpack next to him. Passport, ID, Heavenly Holy Grail, toiletries, UBS black card that could be used worldwide, cell phone, laptop, 3 pairs of underwear to change into, a Hawaiian short dress suit, and 4 pairs of Wenwen special medicine kits that he carried with him at all times. Very good, he had everything he needed. Steady. Calculating the time, he should be able to gather about 600,000 faith points by the time he reached Detroit. To ensure that nothing went wrong, Chen Guang decided to bravely do something. That's right, he was going to challenge the world within the Beggar's Special Training Cup for the second time. In terms of pure arm strength, he was indeed invincible, and the strength of his arm bones was not a problem. But if it was arm wrestling, he would be at a natural disadvantage in terms of weight. Then he would have to use his other hand to hold the table to stabilize his body. The muscles that needed to be mobilized would not only be his arms, but also his pectoral muscles, which would create a terrifying pressure. Right now, his chest, abdomen, and back were only slightly stronger than the average person's. If he relied on his 2 arms to act cool and his pectoral muscles were torn, it would be a huge problem. As for how the world within the Beggar's Special Training Cup would ravage his pectoral muscles, Chen Guang decided not to think about such a terrifying scene. In short, he had to endure the most bitter of hardships. Time was of the essence, and he had no other choice. Chapter 690. As soon as he stepped on the oily ground and stretched, Chen Guang felt refreshed. Someone once told him that the air in foreign countries smelled particularly fresh, but he didn't believe it. Today, he finally experienced it himself. With his nose, which was comparable to an analytical instrument, he came to the following conclusion: it's really fresh. The oxygen ion content is at least 1/10,000th higher than in China. Well, this was pure nonsense. It was all a psychological effect. Besides, there must be cities with good air quality in the United States, but certainly not Detroit, which used to be a heavy industrial city. Pierce was particularly enthusiastic. He even wanted to drag Chen Guang to his club as soon as he got out of the car. He firmly believed that as long as he let this young man walk around the club and see the other young men working hard in pursuit of their dreams, and then look at the achievements of boxing champions like Mayweather, Pacquiao, and Holyfield, all of them, he would be able to do it. Finally, he would use the simplest and easy-to-learn technique to teach him the correct way to exert force, allowing him to punch with half of the techniques of a professional boxer. Then, he would definitely understand how terrifying the lethality of his fists were. For others, it might be a victory that they had to fight for with their lives, but for him, it might just be a matter of one punch. God is really unfair. But this was also good. He had to first let him know that it was not difficult to become a boxing champion, and then he could arouse this young man's interest. Pierce became more and more excited as he thought about it. He even wanted to jump and walk, and he forgot about the jet lag. However, the veteran netizen Lord Guang said, "Mr. Pierce, don't panic. Let me buy a phone card first. You can skip meals for a day, but you can't skip the internet for half a day." "Mr. Chen, my club is also very famous in Detroit. After we get there, if you are interested, we can try the entry-level special training today. You have to know that if ordinary boxers invite me to do special training for them before the game, my fee is $10,000 a day," Pierce said proudly. With his status in the North American boxing world, his private special training was really worth $300,000 a month. Only top boxers could afford to invite him. Chen Guang knew that Su Tao was fond of talents, and he could also understand the latter's feelings. The more one's eyesight was, the more they would be able to understand the value of that simple punch. Even if they saw the same thing, everyone's thoughts were completely different. Pierce saw the shadow of him becoming a boxing champion. Wu Shan even knew the number 800 kilograms, but he had never thought about it in his mind. But Chen Guang really had no intention of becoming a boxing champion. So he said awkwardly while fiddling with his SIM card, "Well, Mr. Pierce, we just flew half the world, and our biological clock is not quite right now. Why don't we take a good rest?" "Oh no, we can't do this. The arm wrestling competition is tomorrow morning, and it's 11 a.m. right now. From my experience, we can't sleep now, absolutely not. You have to at least last until 9 p.m. and then get a good night's sleep. We'll leave tomorrow at 6 a.m., and we'll arrive at the competition venue around 8 p.m. When it came to adjusting the biological clock, Pierce obviously had more say. Chen Guang was also helpless. The old man's words were too reasonable, and he had no choice but to accept it. Actually, he had other plans. The laboratory where Sun Xiaoxuan did her internship was in a university in a small town near Detroit. After the arm wrestling competition the day after tomorrow, he planned to take a stroll in Sun Xiaoxuan's laboratory. Calculating the time, it was almost time for her to go back to China. If they could make it in time, he would go back with her. Thinking about it, Sun Xiaoxuan must be quite depressed. She was introduced to this laboratory by her relatives, and she stayed there for the whole summer. If he suddenly appeared in front of her, she would be overjoyed, right? She might also be so excited that she directly jumped into his arms, right? Alas, if it were in the past, he would definitely hold her tightly with peace of mind. But now there was still a knot in his heart. Unlike other girls, Sun Xiaoxuan, a girl from the Jiangnan region, was really too innocent and cute, and people could not bear to hurt her. If he had to make her sad, he might as well start to keep a distance from her now. It was better than pushing her away when she was beyond redemption, right? Alas, otherwise he would secretly look at her, and then turn around and leave. He did not know if he could still face her with the same state of mind as before next semester. Thinking about it, it was still difficult. Ever since the end of the final exams, too many things had happened, making people unable to help but sigh. Not even 2 months had passed, but it gave him a feeling as if a lifetime had passed. This couldn't be blamed on others. Chen Guang had lived in the Sea of Moments for a whole 200 years, and after coming out, he hadn't seen Sun Xiaoxuan for a long time, so it was inevitable that he would feel a sense of distance. He had forgotten that he had lived as an old monster in the Sea of Moments, but for Sun Xiaoxuan, it had only been less than 2 months. Moreover, he could chat with him from time to time on the internet, and he often saw and heard news about him on the internet and in the class chat. For Sun Xiaoxuan, Chen Guang had never left, and his shadow had never faded. On the contrary, because of the distant ocean, his longing had continuously deepened. Many things had indeed happened to Chen Guang, but the only things that were reported were Jin Shirui and Zhuo Jingxi. Sun Xiaoxuan did not care about what happened between Chen Guang and Jin Shirui. In her heart, she unconditionally chose to believe every word that came out of Chen Guang's mouth. What she really cared about was the words that Chen Guang had said to Zhuo Jingxi at the press conference. She remembered Gao Ye's warning that teacher Zhuo was definitely interested in Chen Guang, so she had to be careful. She somewhat regretted not paying attention at that time, and it turned out that teacher Zhuo had indeed beaten her to it. Although she did not know what the relationship between the two was, Sun Xiaoxuan did not have the courage to take the initiative to ask either of them. She was afraid that she would get an answer that would make her despair. But she knew that Zhuo Jingxi had definitely gone further than her. But even if she knew, what could she do? She had missed such a good opportunity in the hotel outside Wujing City Hospital. What else could she do? If she did not have to finish the experiment here, she would have returned to China a long time ago. Now, she was more anxious than anyone else. The only good news was that she heard that Teacher Zhuo had also come to the United States. It seemed that he was a small leader in a university laboratory in California as a photocatalyst laboratory. It seemed that he would not be returning to China for a while. I will not give up like this, nor will I easily admit defeat. Since you took advantage of the fact that I went abroad first, then don't blame me for rushing back before you and taking back the Qinguang that belongs to me. Even if you are my teacher, I will not give up an inch. It is precisely because you are my teacher that I will not easily admit defeat. There is no reason for a teacher to steal a student's boyfriend. In Sun Xiaoxuan's previous 20 years of life, she had never had such a resolute thought. She was always so weak, trying hard to understand and tolerate everyone around her, and was willing to believe in everyone. Even when she encountered Pan Jiang, it did not cast too much of a shadow in her heart. She did not hate Pan Jiang that much. But this time, it was about her love, and she did not want to retreat or admit defeat. She recalled what Gaoya had said in her heart again and again. Although you are not as tall as Teacher Zhuo, and you are not as voluptuous as her, you are a different woman from her. You are Sun Xiaoxuan, the belle of the class that has been underestimated. Teacher Zhuo is tall and voluptuous, but you are also petite and cute. It is only because of Qinguang's annoying school belle best friend, Wenwen, that you are overshadowed in Jianhuan College. You are too low-key yourself. If you dress up a little, even if the entire Gokyo University were to choose a school belle, there would still be a place for you. Qinguang is very outstanding, but you are not bad either. Besides, we have been classmates for 3 years, so we know each other very well. Lin Jingwei secretly told me that there are so many porn videos in that guy's computer. You should be braver and cook the rice for him. How can he not admit it? You know that he is a responsible person. People change. Chen Guang had been through a lot during this period of time, and he had changed a lot. Sun Xiaoxuan was facing the risk of losing Qin Guang, as well as her best friend Gao Ya's constant encouragement, so she had been trying her best to become tougher and more aggressive. Living in the more fashionable and free United States, she also began to learn to put on some light makeup. Female guards always put on makeup when they liked them. This was an unchanging truth. Sun Xiaoxuan had also grown up. She could not accept that kind of heavy makeup style, but with her foundation, a little light makeup was just right. Now, when she walked on the foreign campus, she was filled with the elegance of an Eastern beauty. In the past 2 months, she had been pursued by many brave and heroic foreign boys, but she already had someone in her heart, so they all hit a wall. Today, she was still beautiful. The experiment had entered the final stage, and she also began to participate in the final draft of the thesis. After finishing her morning work early, she rested her head on her chin and looked at the white clouds outside the window. She thought to herself, what is he doing now? He's really good at making trouble. He actually went to act in a movie again. It's incredible that he has become a big celebrity in 2 months. I'm getting further and further away from him. There will definitely be a lot of female fans harassing him. This guy can't be secretly happy at the pictures of female fans every night, right? Chew. Chen Guang sat on Pierce's MPV and sneezed violently. Who's cursing me? He rubbed his nose and thought about it. Then he finally remembered to open WeChat. 30 seconds later, he was dumbfounded. The Tepester family? The Witch of Science, Nicole Tepester? What the hell? F***CK, a family of Frankenstein geeks. Did it have to be so scary? Great-great-grandfather had been a lab assistant for that super terrifying Tesla? The family had the handwritten notes of Nikola Tesla, who invented alternating current and suspected to be the mastermind behind the Tunguska explosion. The entire family had been Frankenstein geeks for generations? Great-great-grandfather had died in an experimental accident while deciphering Tesla's notes. How tragic! Great-great-grandfather had been blown up again. How tragic. Great-great-grandmother had been blown up together. How inhumane. His parents had also been blown up. How tragic. Now, the entire family was only left with the last descendant. Nicole Tepester, who blew up the school at the age of 8, was now the famous witch of science in North America. She was actually the niece of that unlucky Marianne Smith. Marianne's surname was Tepester before she married Smith. You guys are poisonous. Why didn't you tell me earlier? Wrinkling his nose, Chen Guang seemed to have smelled an explosion in the air. This was too much. With such important news, he was in a dangerous situation. The crazy witch of science, Nicole, would definitely find a way to avenge her last relative, Marianne. After all, when she was very young, her parents had died in an experimental accident. Nicole, who was an orphan, was raised by her aunt, Marianne Smith. At the same time, this generous aunt also funded her to continue the research of this terrifying family. Putting himself in Nicosia's shoes, if he were in her shoes, he would definitely try his best to blow up the culprit into the sky. Alright, even though Hiroyuki Aoyama was the one who pushed Mrs. Smith down, I have to take the blame now. Now, I can't go abroad, especially not to America. But right now I'm sitting on the road in Detroit, okay? Should I just go home now? Chen Guang wanted to retreat. After all, this Tepester family was extraordinarily terrifying. They were too explosive. This whole family is a walking bomb in human form, okay? How could they live like this? Couldn't they just die of old age and illness in their beds? If you have something to say, then say it nicely. Don't drag me down with you. But it wasn't easy for him to make a trip to America. Such a good opportunity to show off with his Kirin arm was right in front of him. If he did it well, he would have a huge harvest of faith points. He really couldn't bear to give it up just like that. This was as awkward as when a buddy with diarrhea rushed into the toilet with great difficulty, only to find out that it was a women's toilet. Did he want to pull up his pants and leave? But the arrow was already on the bowstring, and he had no choice but to shoot it. Even if he found out that it was a women's toilet, he had to shoot it out. Besides, since he was already here, she couldn't possibly find him in just 2 or 3 days, right? Also, look at this photo of Nicosia Teppert. She's clearly a delicate girl with big wavy blonde hair, blue eyes, and big wavy hair. This old man has full power against beautiful girls. As long as she dares to cause trouble, she'll be charmed to death in minutes. She looked so cute, so she definitely wouldn't be too cruel. Her Frankenstein genes should have pretty much degenerated, right? Alright, I'm just spouting nonsense. I'm still a little panicked, but I can't just turn around and run away after coming here for nothing, right? Probably nothing will happen, right? Anyway, I just have to be more vigilant. I'm not a soft persimmon that can be pinched flat by anyone. Just as he hung up on Lu Xiaoyang's WeChat, Chen Guang's phone rang again. Wu Tong had sent another message. After reading Wu Tong's message, he only had one thought in his mind. Life is already so difficult, so why do you still have to torture me like this? Did I accidentally knock the bell of destiny when I was sleeping one day? I'm just taking a stroll abroad and planning to show off to my heart's content. Why are there so many problems? Wu Tong's message was like this. I couldn't get through to you on the phone just now, so I could only tell you through WeChat. We just had an intense exchange of fire with terrorists in Beijing. They're from the Shattered World. According to reliable information, Shui Lin's revenge operation has already caused heavy damage to the Shattered World. They've decided to take revenge. Furthermore, the matter of you and I dealing with Sergio should have been leaked. For the time being, their eyes are on me, but you know that I don't have the ability to do so. They should be able to find some clues. Therefore, I'm worried that they'll suspect you sooner or later, and you might be exposed. During this period of time, you must be well-behaved and don't go abroad. Chen Guang silently put down his phone and looked at the blue sky and white clouds of Detroit outside the car window. He also looked at the peaceful abandoned factory buildings. There were wolves in front and tigers behind. This time, he had fallen into a fire pit. I'm really King Hell's three-headed flame golden-armored howling celestial hound. Chapter 691. Mr. Chin, what's wrong? Are you sleepy? It's fine. How about you take a nap at the club? You can sleep for about half an hour, but no more than that. Otherwise, you won't be able to sleep at night. Don't oversleep. I'll get someone to wake you up. When Pierce saw Chen Guang's unsightly expression, he initially thought that he was too passionate and forced Chen Guang to train with him. It's fine, Mr. Pierce. I'm not blaming you. I'm really thankful for your hospitality and invitation. It's just that I ran into some trouble. Chen Guang forced a smile and explained. Since he knew that he was in danger, he felt like he was sitting on pins and needles if he continued to sit in Pierce's car. There was no doubt that Pierce was a good person. If he continued to stay with them, he would become a bigger target. On the other hand, he would bring them into huge trouble and might die at any time. After thinking about it, Chen Guang felt that he had to separate from Pierce and the others. This was America after all. It wasn't his territory. The disadvantages of being in a foreign land were obvious. The influence of China's military here was far less than in China. They wouldn't be able to provide him with any substantial help. He was in a dangerous situation now. He couldn't bet on the fact that the other party wouldn't find him so quickly. The other party was the world's top assassin organization and the Witch of Science. What if they were really that crazy? Pierce didn't know how terrifying the trouble Chen Guang was talking about was. He said confidently, "It's fine, Mr. Chin. I'm not bragging, but there's no trouble in America that I, Pierce, can't deal with." Seeing how reckless he was, Chen Guang didn't know whether he should be touched or speechless. No, Mr. Pierce, I can't drag you into my trouble. Stop the car by the side of the road. I have to get out. If everything goes well, I'll appear at the wrestling competition tomorrow. We'll contact each other then. Now that he was in a dangerous situation, if Chen Guang continued to participate in the wrestling competition, he would be courting death. Although it was a great pity, since things had already come to this, he might as well give up for the time being. Once he survived this ordeal, he would pay out of his own pocket and increase the prize money for the participants. Then, he would organize a worldwide arm wrestling competition. There was no need to risk his life. Why is that? Pierce was anxious. They would arrive at his club in 10 minutes. He really didn't want to let them go just like that. No reason, Mr. Pierce. Time is of the essence. Stop the car. I'm in more trouble than you know, but I can't tell you. Chen Guang's expression became more and more serious. Pierce's brows furrowed even tighter. The more Chen Guang behaved like this, the more he felt that he might miss this rare genius. No, you may not know my status as a well-known boxing coach in North America. I have a lot of celebrity friends, politicians, entrepreneurs, and even senior agents of the CIA. No matter what it is, I can help you. You are my friend and a genius that I have high hopes for. I won't let you go so easily, really. Mr. Pierce, if you don't stop the driver, I'm going to jump out of the car. Foreman, drive a little faster. Make it 160. Chen Guang was confused by this stubborn brother. Big brother, I'm not joking with you. Can you be more serious? We're in a really bad situation. Don't make trouble. Facing the stubborn Pierce was a headache for him. While the two of them were arguing, in a parking lot next to a fork in the road about 5 minutes away, there were 4 commercial vehicles and a container truck with a colorful, postmodern punk style, parked on both sides of the road. Chen Guang's worries were not wrong. The World Breaker and Niquoise Teppert's movements were faster than he had imagined. In fact, as early as when he got on the plane from Yenjing to Detroit, the two parties already knew his itinerary from the airline's database. Through different means, they found out that he got on the commercial car of the famous professional boxing coach Pierce after getting off the plane. Both parties had the same target, and their actions were the same, which was to ambush him on the road from the airport to the Pierce Club. The traffic at this intersection was complicated and the road was narrow. Pierce's car would make a right turn here, and the road would suddenly narrow, so he would definitely slow down here. He would hide the car in the roadside parking lot, but it was close to the road. When the time came, he would definitely be able to catch Chen Guang off guard. Niquoise lay flat in the driver's seat of the container truck, her fingers tapping on the keyboard beside her in boredom. The famous sorceress of science looked no different from an ordinary girl. Although she was beautiful, she did not care about her appearance. She was wearing a sloppy, long, loose t-shirt and a pair of pajama pants. She didn't even wear shoes or a bra. She was sleepy and had dark circles under her eyes. Ever since she learned of her aunt's death, she had not slept well for a single minute. In one day, she drove this heavy truck across a distance of 1,500 kilometers just to rush to Detroit to ambush Chen Guang. There was no seat in the front passenger seat, but a huge operating platform covered with all kinds of buttons. She called this car Niqua's Mobile Fortress. This car represented her greatest achievement as a sorceress of science. The entire truck contained at least dozens of powerful weapons and dozens of sophisticated modern information equipment, all of which were the results of her research and development. In addition, this mobile fortress, which was a combination of semi-artificial intelligence, could be completely controlled by her alone. The weapons on the car were very characteristic of the Daoist family. They were powerful but very unstable. They were far more informational than the weapons used by ordinary armies. They mainly used explosions, such as honeycomb bombs, self-exploding bees, ant bombs, electronic heat-sensing grasshoppers, and so on. The biggest characteristic of this family was that their desire to create and destroy was equally strong, but they were extremely dissatisfied with mature and stable things. They were eager to pursue excitement, and could even be said to be crazy about the unstable surprise. 300, 299, 298. She was counting down the time it would take for Pierce's business car to pass. As the sorceress of science of the Daoist family, she did not want to waste a single second of her time. Waiting for someone like this, even if it was only for a few minutes, was a great pain. Wasting time was equivalent to slow suicide for her. Boring, really too boring. She decided to try to hack into the electronic devices near her car, such as the mobile phones of the people sitting in the business cars parked on the other side. Using their microphones, she could eavesdrop on what they were talking about. Her fingers typed randomly on the keyboard. About 30 seconds later, she quietly cracked the seemingly solid security defense system of the mobile phones. The conversation that came from the microphones made her eyes narrow. Old 5, according to the boss, we must ensure that Chen Guang is alive. Is that right? That's right. In one of the 4 business cars, World 5 and World 6 were talking in a low voice. Nicole's eyes suddenly lit up. No wonder this guy dared to come to the United States so quickly after killing my aunt. What a cunning bastard. He must have known that I would take revenge and thought that it was better to take the initiative than to defend passively. So, this is a trap he prepared for me. The people in those cars are helpers that he hired with a lot of money. You've really underestimated me, Nicosia. I'll make you pay. I will take the initiative to gain the upper hand. Nicole's fingers slowly placed on the keyboard, and her eyes flashed fiercely. What a beautiful misunderstanding. Chapter 692. Hold on, Brother 6. We're being monitored. As World 5 and World 6 were chatting in the MPV, the member of the Broken World who was in charge of intelligence suddenly exclaimed. Although Nicosia was a genius, the Broken World was also a veteran assassin organization. Their intelligence department was not to be trifled with. Very soon, they discovered that an external signal was invading their electronic equipment through radio frequency. They quickly alerted them and responded quickly, attempting to follow the enemy's signal to counterattack. Interesting. He's an expert. Although I, Nicosia, am not interested in being a hacker and only want to play with you guys, I like the feeling of being challenged. On the other side, Nicosia sensed the opponent's counterattack and became even more spirited. However, she didn't get up. Instead, she continued to type furiously on the keyboard with one hand. She looked like a naughty child who was randomly patting the keyboard, but in fact, she was writing and transmitting commands in an instant. The enemy is so powerful. My counterattack has been discovered. It's coming. The intelligence officer's face turned pale. The short confrontation did not even last 10 seconds, and he was defeated cleanly. The enemy had used an extremely short amount of time to decipher their defense system. It was simply terrifying. World 5 and World 6 were equally shocked. According to the intelligence, Chen Guang was just an ordinary student who had some relations with China's higher-ups. It was impossible for him to have any experts around him. Their plan was very simple. Chen Guang had a close relationship with the Beijing District Bureau Chief, Wu Tong. That woman was the key person who had caused the death of World 9. At the same time, that woman's father was an extremely high-ranking figure in China's political scene. Other than that, this man seemed to be a famous person and had a close relationship with a suspected descendant of China's higher-ups. Their previous revenge operation in China had already failed. That country had used their terrifying military to make the entire country impregnable. They were lax on the outside but tense on the inside. On the surface, it seemed like ordinary murder cases were very difficult to solve. However, once someone entered their sights and became their target, even the most outstanding special agent assassin would find it hard to move an inch in that country. Even an assassin organization like the Broken World, which had a sacrificial spirit, was the same. Although they were not afraid of death, they did not wish for their important members to be sacrificed for nothing. However, they could not do nothing. The madman who had been ambushing members of the Broken World all over the world was too hateful. They had to think of a way to stop him. Unfortunately, their previous attempts to kill or capture the madman had all failed. Instead, they had paid a heavy price for it. That was why they were trying their best to force the madman to retreat. They had originally planned to create some trouble in Yanjing to intimidate those in power in Wuxia. However, they were really unlucky to run into the old masters who were planning to start a war with the internal force martial artists. The entire Yanjing city seemed peaceful, but in fact, it was full of danger. Well, the inescapable net that he had prepared for the internal force martial artists to fight to the death had been tested on the people of the World Breaker. In the end, the Broken World's gaze fell on Chen Guang, but he was also helpless. Capture this man alive, then use him to negotiate with the higher-ups of Wuxia, and then let them recall that madman. This was Shattered World's strategy. They had even sent out 2 captain-level experts to lead 2 squads to ambush Yi Shiwen. This was to ensure that nothing would go wrong. He never thought that he would be ambushed by an expert while he was camping. Who are they? Activate electronic interference. Block all communications in our vicinity. Sure, the Fifth ordered decisively. After waiting for another 10 seconds, the intelligence agent wiped the cold sweat off his forehead. Fortunately, the shield was fast enough. My underlying code was almost breached. The 2 captains, sure the 5th and 6th, looked at each other. Where did this expert come from? Who knows? We have to be careful. Could it be that this person's identity is higher than what our intelligence indicated? Forget it. Don't worry about this. He will be here in 2 minutes. 6th, you keep an eye on him. When he appears, you shoot his tires first. I'll bring some people to capture him. Sure, the 5th held the car window with a solemn expression. The air was filled with the smell of danger. However, they were not particularly afraid. As the assassins of the Broken World, which day did they not live on the edge of a knife? TSK, boring. You can't beat me, so you hide in your turtle shell. What a bunch of trash. Nicosia Tepster said disdainfully after she realized that her radio frequency stream was blocked by the opponent's strong electromagnetic interference. As a demoness who had bombed a school at the age of 8, she did not have the ideals and outlook of a normal person. It was God's mercy that she could live to this day. She did not carefully consider the relationship between the people in the MPV and Chen Guang. She only remembered the words, "I must ensure that Chen Guang is alive. Therefore, they must be enemies. All right, it's time to send you to meet God." After making the decision, she muttered to herself. She sat up straight, got up, took 2 steps forward, and sat down in the operating compartment in the front passenger seat. She was getting serious. The dense sound of keyboard tapping rose and fell in the Fortress heavy truck. The frequency was even faster than when Chen Guang played the piano. Strings of mysterious codes appeared on the screen in front of Nicosia. The blonde girl who looked lazy and sloppy just now suddenly became radiant without warning. It was as if she would only bloom with her true brilliance when she sat in front of her operating table. The halo on the screen shone on her face, and Nicosia's grin grew wider and wider. She gradually couldn't control herself and laughed wildly. Her face looked particularly ferocious in the dim light in the car, full of hysterical and seductive beauty. "I'll blow you up, you bastards. I'll blow you up. Go to hell. Damn Huaxia people, you actually want to take the initiative to attack me, Nicosia, in your dreams. I'll send your helpers to heaven right away, and then you'll have to see Aunt Mariana soon." She was not afraid of alerting the enemy at all. The moment Qin Guang's feet landed at Detroit Airport and left the airport instead of immediately turning around and flying back to Huaxia, Nicosia was certain that this man would not be able to go back. It could even be said that if these MPVs were really Qin Guang's helpers, it would be more to her liking. Bastard, despair. These trash you found will soon go to heaven. Then you can run in despair. But you can't escape, because you've been targeted by Nicosia, you must die. This scientific sorceress kept nagging. This was her habit. Whenever she felt excited, she couldn't help nagging. About a minute or two later, above Nicosia's mobile fortress, the cover of the warehouse brazenly opened, and the launcher full of self-destructing electronic bees slowly rose, ready to go. Each self-destructing electronic bee was about the size of a fingernail. There were 4 miniature propellers on top, and a miniature high-explosive bomb hung below. Although these electronic bees were not big, their explosive power was not small, and they could be controlled by Nicosia's special radio frequency remote control to hit anywhere within a radius of 3 kilometers. At the same time, a slide track extended from the bottom of the warehouse of the heavy fortress truck, and rows of miniature electronic grasshoppers filed down from the slide track. Her fingers shook on the launch button, and she hesitated for a moment. She thought that since the other party had a strong electromagnetic interference shielding equipment, they might also have some skills. In order to be foolproof, she decided to warm up the new guy that she had just made last week. That's right, the directional electromagnetic railgun inherited from Tesla. Its power was amazing, and it was easy to use. In a sense, it was even more advanced than Tesla's original version. Nicosia's version of the electromagnetic railgun was smaller, its power was more concentrated, and it was easier to control. In the new situation of modern warfare, it was countless times more useful than Tesla's original version, which required the construction of a tower. The only drawback was that ever since this thing was developed, it had not been tested on the heavy fortress truck even once. But Nicosia Tempest was not worried about anything going wrong. She had at least carried out more than 10,000 flawless verification calculations on the railgun, completed at least thousands of experimental preheating, and fixed test firing dozens of times. After moving it to the heavy fortress truck, because it was really troublesome to store energy, and she had been busy with other things recently, she had forgotten to test it for a while. But there definitely won't be any problems. I'm the genius Nicosia. While looking at the 3D full environment model that had finally been built on the electronic screen, Nicosia finally pressed the launch button. Accompanied by a mechanical rustling sound from the top and bottom of the heavy fortress truck at the same time, the dense light spots on the screen suddenly moved. At this time, the image on Nicosia's screen looked a bit like a very popular game in the past. That's right, it was StarCraft. 200 Wyvern Venom Burst, ahead of the opponent by 80 people. How could they lose? Team A would be blown away. Mr. Pierce, I really have to get out of the car. Tell Mr. Foreman to slow down, or I'll really get angry. I know you mean well, but now is not the time to joke. In the car, Qin Guang was still putting up a final struggle. As an experienced Chinese, he still couldn't stand Brother Black's straightforwardness. To put it nicely, they were straightforward, but to put it bluntly, they were stubborn. He seemed to believe that as soon as he arrived at his club, he would be fascinated by boxing as fast as he expected. Is there something wrong with his brain? Besides, today's situation is special. It's really not the right time. Let's wait until I'm safe and sound, then we can have a good chat in the future. Not now. Coach Pierce was quite helpless. Chinese people were really stubborn. He also knew that he was a little out of control. When he was in China, he still knew how to advance and retreat. Suddenly, he came to Detroit with him. At the thought of bringing him to his club and becoming his guide and agent on the boxing stage, Pierce was a little too excited. "Mr. Chin, I'm really sorry if I've caused you trouble. How about this? Where do you want to go? I'll ask Foreman to take you to the destination first, okay?" Pierce said tentatively. He wanted to do something to continue strengthening his relationship with Chen Guang. Chen Guang was about to shake his head and refuse him directly. Suddenly, there was a fierce fire about 500 or 600 meters in front of them. A loud noise followed, accompanied by a violent vibration. Even the thick MPV obviously trembled. Foreman, who was driving, desperately gripped the steering wheel and finally managed to slowly stop the car by the side of the road. The other cars in front and behind were in similar situations, all parked crookedly on the side. A group of people got out of the MPV and looked ahead. The fire there quickly rose into the sky, burning higher and higher. It seemed to dye the sky orange in broad daylight. The whistling sound brought by the explosion and flames drifted from afar. The nearby vehicles parked on the side of the road made a harsh siren because of the violent vibration. In the small courtyard by the road, large dogs were roaring angrily. Many people rushed out of their homes in panic and stood in the courtyard, staring at the place where the explosion occurred in the distance. For a time, the entire road on both sides became chaotic because of the violent and sudden explosion, as if the end of the world had come. Chen Guang's eyes widened. He had long heard that the ground cooked with oil often caused trouble. Seeing it today, it really lived up to its reputation. "I just came out of the airport and my feet haven't even touched the ground yet, and I'm already given such a big surprise? The legendary terrorist attack? Delicious chicken. Who's so unlucky? It's the parking lot at the junction of Bellur Road and Barra Road. Paul's home is nearby. Oh my God." Pierce was more panicked than Chen Guang. It seemed that the place where the big explosion occurred was very close to his friend's home. He lifted his legs and wanted to rush forward, but several other young black men quickly stopped him. If there was a terrorist attack over there, he would die in vain if he rashly approached. As a new and hot foreign friend, Chen Guang had seen a lot of similar reports on news TV. He deeply thought that the people of the United States lived in dire straits for a long time, so they were not very compassionate, nor would they add insult to injury. They were just somewhat used to it. "According to our country's official statistics, your country has to bomb thousands of times every year, okay?" He silently took out a cup of water from his backpack. The tea that was brewed when he left the airport had been swaying all the way with the car, and it had formed a lot of bubbles. It was fine. He sucked the bubbles off the surface, and there was still a mouthful of fresh, rich, and fragrant hot tea. He gently took a sip of the hot tea and mourned for the hardships of the people of the United States. Then Chen Guang was ready to leave. "Don't mourn for others. You're not much better off yourself. What awaits me is the double crisis of the broken world and Nicosia Tepester. Mr. Pierce, there is an old Chinese saying that goes, 'Heaven helps the worthy.' Try calling your friend. Maybe he's not home?" Pierce hugged his head in pain. "No, Paul is not my friend. I hate him." "Then why do you look so sad?" "My ex-wife secretly lent him $1 million, and he has only returned less than $80,000. What a sad story." Chen Guang silently took another sip of tea. There was too much information. Closing the cup, Chen Guang was ready to run. He did not know where to go, but at least he had to find a conspicuous place to hide. Then he would find a way to contact his country. He needed support. "Then I'll leave first." At this moment he suddenly felt that his ears could not hear anything. It was a little itchy. He scratched his ears, but it was still useless. There was still no sound. The noise from before had suddenly disappeared. The whole world suddenly became silent without any warning. Strange. What the hell? Chapter 693. Did I accidentally trigger the heavenly grail and enter the world in the cup? It can't be so fast, right? I just experienced the one-line world in the cup a few days ago. How could the heavenly grail be so diligent? What's going on? Chen Guang turned his head and looked around. On the fence of the small courtyard about 20 or 30 meters behind him, a huge golden retriever was opening and closing its mouth crazily. It was clearly roaring, but no sound could be heard. Pierce also looked at him with a pale face. His mouth opened and closed, but no one knew what he was saying. Chen Guang narrowed his eyes and looked at him. At this point, he could only rely on his lip reading. Well, he still couldn't understand. Pierce suddenly fell to the ground, and at the same time, his right hand fiercely pulled at his clothes. This time, Chen Guang finally understood what he was mouthing. He said, "Get down." 5 seconds later, the silent world once again regained its sound. It was simply deafening. There was no other noise. The long sound of the car alarms, the roar of the golden retriever, and the screams of people covering their heads, there was only the image and no sound. It was as if in an instant, the sky and the earth were occupied by the terrible buzzing sound, and there was no room for any other sound. Broken glass shards came toward them. The bulletproof glass on Pierce's MPV had been shattered by the resonance. In this regard, Chen Guang, who was lying on the ground with Pierce, only wanted to say one thing. "America is so scary. I want to go home. Damn, what the hell exploded in front of us? Are you trying to turn the world upside down? Can I still live until the day when the broken world and the Tepester family come for me?" It turned out that the most dangerous thing in this country wasn't the two enemies at all. One could just walk on the road and run into this kind of sh*t. That was the most terrifying thing. This was simply hell on earth. The second explosion was much more violent than the first one, but what was even more strange was that there was only a buzzing sound and no explosion sound. There was no fire in front of them, and even the raging fire that had been burning earlier had been extinguished. A minute or two earlier, Nikwa's tuppet had chosen Dragon Mount. The dense swarm of self-destructing electronic bees and electronic grasshoppers took the lead and pounced on the MPV where the 20 members of the Shattered World were hiding. They were ferocious and sudden. If it was an ordinary person who was ambushed, he would have fallen for it without any suspense. However, the people in the broken world reacted quickly. Seeing that the situation was not right, they immediately started the car and tried to escape. Although they still couldn't escape from Nicosia's remote explosion, they quickly dispersed. As if the curse of a certain toxic healer had been proven, even though Nicosia had launched an ambush and released all the self-destructing electronic bees and grasshoppers in order to ensure the effectiveness of the ambush, the assassins of the world of Shatter had relied on the sturdiness of the special vehicles and were not destroyed immediately. Seeing this, Nicole, who had already descended into madness, did not hesitate to press the launch button of the electromagnetic railgun. She planned to use her new toy to paint a life stronghold for these helpers of Chen Guang. Like many of her family's elders, the first test of her railgun on the heavy truck ended in failure. The result was extremely tragic. An uncontrolled pulse explosion erupted from the core of the fortress heavy truck. Although there were no flames or explosions, the terrifying shockwave destroyed everything in the parking lot, including Nicosia's own fortress heavy truck and the world of Shatterer's 4 MPVs. It was the strange shockwave released by the pulse explosion that caused Chen Guang and the others to temporarily lose their hearing. Chen Guang, Pierce, and the others lay on the ground for a long time. When they finally regained their hearing, they stood up in shock. Regarding this sudden second explosion, Chen Guang could only use one word to describe it: glass destroyer. It was truly a tragedy. It was unknown how many people were injured or killed, but there was no doubt that all the glass in front of him had been destroyed. Everything had shattered into pieces on the ground. He had no interest in seeing how tragic the explosion was. He tidied up the cup in his hand and said, "Mr. Pierce, if there's nothing else, I'll leave first. If tomorrow's arm wrestling match can still be held, and I don't encounter any accidents, I'll see you tomorrow. If I don't come tomorrow, I'll definitely come to see you the next time you come to China, okay?" Pierce saw that he still wanted to run. "Don't. Such a big thing happened. Okay, I'll see you another day." Before he could finish, Chen Guang had already run out of sight with his backpack. "This bro is really fast." Pierce said helplessly. Chen Guang also put on his escape mode. The crisis after mistakenly entering the tiger's den had not yet been resolved. It was a pity that he was unfamiliar with Detroit, and his oriental face was particularly eye-catching. He had things hanging on him, and he was unwilling to find Sun Xiaoshuan. He could only wander around the slightly deserted former motor city by himself. He did not even dare to use his phone to make a call. Instead, he simply turned it off and wandered around for half an hour. He found a park in the middle of the street and sat down on a bench wearily and irritably. Once again, he hated the fact that he was not strong enough. If he had the strength of Wenwen today, not to mention Wenwen, as long as he had the strength of Xianqin and Wu Miaowan, there would be no need for him to flee in panic under such circumstances. I don't care if you're the Daoist family or the Shatterer. If you dare to provoke me, I'll shatter you in minutes. Sigh, my cup isn't strong enough. Chen Guang picked up the cup and drank some water. However, he did not notice that there was an extremely fine drop of red blood on the tip of his right index finger that was holding the cup. At this time, he still did not know that Nicosi Daoist was completely dead. World 5 and World 6 of the Shatterer did not end well either. Not even their bones were left. The blood stained on his cup cover was a drop of Nicosi Daoist's blood that was stuck to the fragment and brought over. Accompanied by a piece of unpleasant music, the announcer's voice came from the loudspeaker in the middle of the street park. Welcome to Detroit News Radio. We're now broadcasting a special piece of news. Half an hour ago, there was a violent explosion in the parking lot at the junction of Bellur Road and Barra Road. Suddenly, the sound of a news broadcast came from the loudspeaker behind his chair. Chen Guang's ears immediately perked up. According to the police investigation, the explosion caused a total of 21 deaths and 43 injuries. Chen Guang frowned slightly. So many people died? Human lives were really cheap. One of them is the well-known Frankenstein, Nicosi Daoist, and the other 20 are members of a terrorist organization of unknown origin. They are suspected to be from the internationally notorious killer organization, the Shatterer. Sitting in the chair, Chen Guang was dumbfounded. He dug his ears, thinking he had heard wrong. After waiting for another 10 minutes, he bit the bullet and turned on his phone to call China. He asked Jiang Yuanchao to mobilize the intelligence department to inquire about the news. Chen Guang finally confirmed this fact. Although he did not know what happened, the result was that his two rivals inexplicably collided with each other. The people of the Shatterer and Nicosi Daoist perished together. There was no doubt that this was great news for him. Chen Guang could not help but be smug. The old man was really the chosen one favored by fate. Yes, that's right. Anyone who dared to be an enemy of the old man would be cursed and rejected by the god of fate. In such a dangerous situation, I was saved just by lying down. What did I do? I didn't do anything. All I did was draw circles in my heart and curse them from time to time. Speaking of which, this was indeed the terrifying Daoist family. They practically had the ability to self-destruct. The fate of this family was not to die in bed. They had to blow themselves up. My great-grandfather blew up, my grandparents blew up, my parents blew up, and now you blew up too. What a terrifying Frankenstein family. Tragic, too tragic. Let me mourn for you for 3 seconds. As for the shattered world, according to the reliable information provided by the U.S. intelligence personnel, the highest-ranking assassins of that unfortunate organization in the U.S. were the two experts, World 5 and World 6. At the crime scene, they also found evidence that represented their identities. Therefore, there was no doubt that Chen Guang was safe. No matter how fast the people of the Shatterer reacted, they would not be able to send another top-level killer over in a short period of time. Other than that, they had suffered such a huge loss for no reason. Before they understood the situation, they might not have the guts to continue sending people to their deaths. He had a self-destructing level bodyguard by his side. Anyone who bumped into him would feel guilty. Refreshed, Chen Guang packed up his belongings and called Pierce. Mr. Pierce, are you there? Yes, that's right. I'm done with my business. I'm coming to your club now, huh? How could you call someone to pick me up? How could you do that? Oh, by the way, Can you prepare a room for me when I arrive? I want to take a bath first. About 20 minutes later, Chen Guang happily got into Mr. Foreman's car. This time, he had changed into a Hummer with thick bulletproof glass. Pierce was also scared out of his wits. Pierce's boxing club was very large, covering an area of up to 10 acres. There were several villas, swimming pools, gyms, training rooms, and other facilities. After all, every top-level boxer was not short of money. When they received private training from Pierce, they would live in the villas provided by the club. Private training worth $300,000 a month was worth it. Pierce was very enthusiastic about Chen Guang. Since the villa was empty, he simply lent Chen Guang the White House where Mayweather used to live. Mr. Chen, I'm so happy that you can come. What do you think? Are you interested in trying on the measuring machine now? Pierce couldn't wait. Chen Guang, on the other hand, was thinking about making medicine and taking a bath. He rolled his eyes and lied. Mr. Pierce, there's a custom in my hometown. When I visit a friend's house, I must take a good bath to show my respect to the host, so, okay, no problem. Pierce quickly agreed. I respect the customs of the Wuxia people. By the way, we have a small party in the backyard with many beautiful models. After all, we are all very sleepy now. It's too difficult to stay up until night. We need to refresh ourselves. Money and beautiful women were the eternal pursuits of men in the boxing ring. However, Chen Guang decided to maintain the traditional image of the Wuxia people until the last moment. Thank you for your kindness. I'll come back later. I don't need it now. Finally, he drove them away. Chen Guang found a ceramic pot in the villa and began to boil medicine by himself. He was used to Xian Qin and Wu Miaowan doing these things for him. It was very difficult to do it by himself. After working hard for more than half an hour, he finally lay comfortably in the bathtub. Then he picked up the cup again. His eyes gradually became serious. Come on, the strongest pectoral muscles in history. Chapter 694. After a brief space-time transition, he once again appeared in the world in the cup. This time, he was soaking in the bathtub in his underwear. When he entered the world in the cup, there were no scenes that were inappropriate for children. Lioli still seemed to be sitting cross-legged in the center of Cloud City. She probably hadn't played with her money machine for a few days. He didn't know what she was doing. Seeing that Chen Guang had arrived, Lioli didn't get up to greet him. She only opened her eyes and said weakly, "Oh, you're here? Help yourself. I'm very busy today and don't have time to chat with you." Chen Guang rolled his eyes. Why do you look like you don't want to see me? As an old lady, you're simply incompetent, okay? Well, anyway, Lioli has always been like this. I'm used to it. Help yourself, it's not a big deal. In fact, he didn't know that ever since a wisp of his soul was absorbed by the heavenly Holy Grail, no matter what he wanted to practice, Lioli would miserably be dragged into it as a prop. No one would have a good expression if they encountered such a thing. Lu Minghua also seemed to be a little absent-minded. She was bored to death as she swayed there. No one knew what she was thinking. When Chen Guang got closer, he realized that the flower was actually wrapping an iPad on one of its leaves. She was happily watching a movie. In a blink of an eye, it seemed to be a braid movie. A flower watching a braid movie? City people really know how to play. By the way, what do you want to practice this time? You only have 660,000 faith points now, right? Beggar version? Lu Minghua seemed to have just finished watching an episode. She put away the iPad, turned around, and said to Chen Guang with a smile. Seeing Lu Minghua, who was dozens of feet tall, speaking in a little girl's voice in front of him, Chen Guang felt quite strange. I want to train my pectoral muscles. Yes, that's right. I'll also train the beggar version. I'm especially motivated today. What? Say it louder, I didn't hear you clearly. Lu Minghua's interest was suddenly raised. Pectoral muscles. Pectoral muscles. Did you hear me clearly? Oh, not bad. Lu Minghua replied meaningfully, then said, Sister Lioli, did you hear that? Your Chen Guang wants to train his pectoral muscles. Chen Guang was baffled by her weird expression. What's going on? Isn't it just training your chest muscles? Is there a need for you to be so surprised? Although pectoral muscles were a little embarrassing, weren't they still muscles? Seriously, he was making a fuss over nothing. Lu Li, who was originally meditating like a solemn old monk, almost fell to the ground when she heard this. Previously, when Qin Guang was training the soles of his feet, she turned into a foot bathtub. When he was training his ankles and Achilles tendons, she turned into a water shower. When he was training his wind god kick, she turned into a plastic track. Now, he was going to train his pecs, and it was the beggar version. What did he need to transform into? Just thinking about it made her feel that it was too beautiful to look straight at. Therefore, Lu Li gave up. She stood up and appeared in front of Qin Guang in a flash. Can you think of a more reliable place? Why do you have to train your pectoral muscles? Can't you change to another one? Qin Guang shrugged. It's rare for me to be so motivated. It's fine if you don't encourage me, but I won't change. I won't change even if you beat me to death. I have a whole set of plans that depend on these two pectoral muscles to survive. Besides, if you want me to change, you have to give me a reliable reason, okay? This Empress. Lu Li didn't say anything in the end. She really couldn't say it. If this guy knew that she had actually transformed into a foot bathtub, wouldn't he laugh to death? Lu Minghua, who was at the side, looked at Lu Li's deflated look with a smile. He was very happy. When he thought that Lu Li would have to train his pectoral muscles in the beggar version later, he was even happier. All right, Lord Lu Li, time is running out. Send me on my way now. Wear my peerless pectoral muscles and I will definitely benefit mankind. I will be a good person who is helpful to society and mankind. As Chen Guang spoke, he deliberately shook his pectoral muscles in front of Lu Li. He was very cocky. For some reason, the more he saw her blushing and shy look, the more he couldn't resist the urge to tease her. He knew that danger lurked everywhere, but he couldn't control his urge to court death. Teasing the Empress was addictive. Lu Li was annoyed by his mischievous look, but she couldn't do anything about it. Could it be that I really can only train his pectoral muscles? I won't become two hands and keep massaging his body, will I? Isn't this a little too much? I'm a dignified Empress. Falling into this guy's hands is really humiliating. How sad. At this moment, Lu Minghua's voice sounded in her ears. Sister Lu Li, I have an idea. Didn't you send a girl in just now? There's such a thing? Lu Li was stunned at first. Then, she hurriedly communicated with the divine soul that had fused with the heavenly Holy Grail. Indeed, she found an extra soul in the Grail. Interesting. This soul is very interesting. It's even more interesting than the few souls that the heavenly Holy Grail had accidentally absorbed. A smile gradually appeared on Lu Li's face. In the past, she really couldn't do anything about these souls that had been accidentally absorbed. She could only let them wander around at the mercy of the Holy Grail. For example, Lung Qin had been sent to the realm of the transient sea. There was another divine soul that was still wandering around. Otherwise, it would still be suppressed in the Holy Grail as the purest energy. But things were different now. Now that Lu Minghua's body had partially fused with the heavenly Holy Grail, and a wisp of Lu Li's divine soul had also fused with the heavenly Holy Grail, she could do something about this special soul that had come in. Lu Li's eyes gradually lit up. Let's go back to before the second pulse explosion in the afternoon. When she pressed the launch button and heard the strange sound coming from the middle of the heavy fortress truck, Nicosia knew that she was dead meat. But she didn't expect that she would die so easily. But this seemed to be the fate of her entire family. Just like her parents, she was going to die because of the results of her own research. This was how it should be. But it was a pity that she couldn't leave behind more results before she died. Her biggest regret was that she was only 16 years old and couldn't even leave behind a descendant for the Daoist family. But she didn't feel that she had done anything wrong. In any case, her parents were also intoxicated with their Frankenstein life. They didn't care that they would die easily and leave a child like her alone in the world. This was fate, and it had been engraved in the genes of the Daoist family. Oh, by the way, there's also a great regret. I couldn't avenge Aunt Mariana. That Wuxia man named Qin Guang is still alive. How hateful! She was indeed the last descendant of the Frankenstein family. From the time the electromagnetic railgun malfunctioned to the time the terrifying pulse vibration blasted her into pieces, only 1 or 2 seconds had passed. She actually thought of so many things, and then her body was torn apart inch by inch. Everything happened so fast that she didn't even have time to feel pain. Her consciousness blurred for a moment. She thought to herself, my precious thoughts dissipated just like that? I'm a treasure of mankind, sigh. But her consciousness didn't completely disappear as she imagined. After an unknown amount of time, perhaps as long as a century, she slowly opened her eyes. Where is this? What am I doing here? Why am I not dead yet? At this moment, a gorgeous halo appeared in front of her, and an oriental woman so beautiful that she didn't look like a woman from the mortal world slowly appeared. Her whole body was shrouded in clouds, and only her face could be seen clearly, but it was filled with an extremely holy and noble aura. Am I in heaven? Is this an angel? So beautiful. Nicosia Tempest, do you want to understand the meaning of living? Lioli smiled faintly and said softly. The divine power that belonged to her was mixed in her voice, making her voice seem ethereal and distant, extremely charming, with the power to bewitch people and shake their will. It was unstoppable. The divine emperor's voice slowly pounced toward Nicosia, and Lioli planned to take this special soul. What? Nicosia Tempest's face was blank. Lioli's face stiffened. Damn, this girl doesn't understand Chinese. She had no choice but to change to English and start again. Nicosia, do you want to understand the meaning of living? All right, the second time she came, she spoke much faster, but it didn't matter. The divine power contained in the divine emperor's voice could also bewitch Nicosia Tempest's will. Not really. Nicosia seriously thought about Lioli's words and answered with her rigorous scientific work attitude. The veins on Lioli's forehead bulged, and she resisted the urge to smash this girl's soul with a slap. Why? Because I'm already dead. Why would I still think about the meaning of living? Nicosia especially couldn't understand this angel's thinking, and felt that what she said was too strange. All right, you win. Lioli decided not to play tricks, otherwise she was really afraid that she wouldn't be able to control her emotions, and it was better to directly take action later. Lioli? Why are you in a daze? Chen Guang called out to Lioli for a long time, but there was no response, so he came over and urged, quickly send me on my way. I have to train my chest muscles. Lioli opened her narrowed eyes. Don't worry, I'll be right there. Then, her mind once again sank into the wisp of soul that had fused with the heavenly Holy Grail, and she slowly opened her palm to grab Nicosia Tempest's soul. Who the hell are you? What are you doing? Nicosia looked at the palm that was getting closer and closer, and screamed in panic, because she discovered a particularly strange thing. Originally, the angel in front of her seemed to be about the same size as her, but when she began to stretch out her hand, her 5 fingers became as tall as her whole body. Was it because her hands were getting bigger? No, did I become smaller? I'll know just by looking at my hand. Strange, where are my hands? Oh, I've become a ball. Oh my God. I've become a ball. As expected of Nicosia, even when encountering such a strange thing, she could still analyze the situation in her mind so quickly. But it was of no use. She was still pinched in Lioli's hand, and then she was ruthlessly thrown out like a baseball. At the same time, Qin Guang, who was in Cloud City, was also sucked into the world in the cup with a whoosh. Oh, this familiar armor, like the touch of the skin, 100% fit, super perfect ergonomics, for every fitness user to provide the perfect experience. Nicosia Tempest slowly opened her eyes. No, she no longer had eyes. Qin Guang. She had just memorized this face not long ago, and it still left a deep impression on her. This must be the angel's gift. Even though I'm already dead, he gave me another chance to start over. The angel is helping me to avenge Aunt Mariana. Only by killing him can I be free and go to heaven. Nicole thought to herself, this must be the angel's gift. So let me strangle you to death. Nicosia slowly stretched out her hands, and then ruthlessly pinched Chen Guang's pectoralis major. Oh no, my hands are completely out of my control. No, this isn't my hands, then what are they? Wait, what am I now? What kind of disgusting things are these disobedient mechanical arms of mine doing again? Didn't I want to kill him? But why am I grabbing his chest? No, this can't even be considered a grab, but a massage? She was confused. What the hell have I become? What kind of disgusting setting is this? Oh my God. So shameful. So disgusting. Let me go. Why is this happening? Nicosia began to scream crazily in her heart, but it was meaningless. She couldn't control her hands at all. Chen Guang didn't know that there was someone in his world in the cup, and it was the witch of explosive science that he was so afraid of before. He couldn't hear Nicosia's screams, and his whole body was immersed in the horse slaughter chicken. The effect of this massage was really fierce. The strength was super strong, the touch was unique, and the vibration was fierce. The frequency of the vibration was really fierce, just like Professor Yang's electric shock. I can't stop shaking at all. To be honest, it's starting to hurt a little. It really hurts. I can't. Can we pause? Well, with the nature of the world in the cup, it definitely won't work. You're getting more and more energetic, more and more fierce? Beat me to death if you have the ability. Fine, you don't have the ability. Chen Guang didn't know what the principles of this pair of strange little hands from the world in the cup were. It was actually able to completely control the vibration on the two pectoral muscles and didn't affect other parts of his body at all. But the heavenly Holy Grail had always been like this. There was no scientific reasoning behind it, it just beat and shook to death. Rip. Pain. My pectoral muscles were torn. Chen Guang's mouth twitched, and he was in so much pain that he broke out in cold sweat. He knew that the beggar's version of the world in the cup would not be so comfortable, but he couldn't struggle even if he wanted to. He was trapped in the armor, and couldn't retract his arms and legs at all. He could only barely move his butt. But his injuries didn't last long. In the blink of an eye, he was instantly healed by the divine power that the heavenly Holy Grail forcibly poured into him. The next second, he was torn apart again with a rip. He finally understood the principle of the beggar's version of the world in the cup's strengthening training. It kept tearing him apart, and then recovering. After exceeding the limit, the injuries caused would be quickly healed, and in the process of healing, it would be further strengthened. This move required very little space, and the consumption of divine power wasn't too great. It was just that it was extremely painful. If he had more faith points, he could choose a bigger space, and at least he could get a normal fitness equipment. The root of the problem was that he was poor. What he lacked was not money, but faith points. 4 more faith points. For the sake of showing off at the World Arm Wrestling competition tomorrow, the old man had to grit his teeth and endure. Outside in the Cloud City, Lioli clapped her hands in satisfaction. This little girl's soul is really useful. In the future, we can stuff her in for such trivial things. It will save me the trouble of having to go through this personally. That's right, clever Sister Lioli. Lu Minghua expressed her agreement. With the cooperation of one person and one flower, the two of them could be considered to have successfully interfered with the operation of the heavenly Holy Grail once. They forcefully stuffed Nicosia Teepister's fresh and hot soul into Chen Guang's beggar's version of the world in the cup. It was indeed useful. Nicosia discovered one thing. Although she didn't know what was going on and felt extremely ashamed, it seemed that the feeling of torturing Chen Guang to death seemed pretty good. It seemed to be much better than killing him directly. Outside in the Cloud City, Lioli suddenly remembered something. By the way, Lu Minghua, what TV series were you watching just now? Lu Minghua thought for a while. I didn't watch TV series. I watched a movie called The Deer and the Cauldron. It's quite fun. Oh, I saw it before. There's a unique skill called 100 Shots Piercing Heart Dragon Claw, Lioli said. Lu Minghua shook the flower bud. No, it's 100 Shots Piercing Heart Dragon Claw. Oh! Lioli's voice dragged out, as if she understood everything. Then she gave Lu Minghua a thumbs up. Well done. Chapter 695. Although he knew that the training process of the beggar's version of the world of Pectoralis Major would be very miserable, Lord Guang was still tortured to death when he experienced it. He reminded himself once again that he would never consider the beggar's version of the world of cups next time. No matter how urgent he was, he would not open a new dungeon unless he had saved up 2 million to enjoy the deluxe version. Alright, this self-reminder was actually useless. His greatest characteristic was that he would go forward despite knowing that there was a tiger in the mountain. Whenever it was time to make a choice, he would forget the pain once the scar healed, only to regret it when it came to the end. As time passed, the mechanical arm driven by the mechanical core that Nicosia Ticebester had transformed into further upgraded the dragon claw. "Take my 30,000 destructive hammer." Nicosia roared wildly in excitement. She came up with a lot of Marvel-esque names for her moves, making this boring thing for ordinary people interesting. Fatal Combo Smash Boulders. Explosive Shock Wave. Thunder God's Demonic Claw. Nicosia herself found it unbelievable. She had inexplicably turned into a machine and was tormenting this Wuxia man named Qin Guang. After experiencing the initial panic and confusion, she slowly accepted this cruel and strange reality. No matter what, it did not matter whether she still had a body or not. At least her consciousness still existed, which meant that she was really still alive in a sense. This was a good thing, wasn't it? For a person who had died under her own electromagnetic railgun and whose body had been completely shattered into pieces, this was probably the simplest happiness. She began to understand the meaning of the existence that might not be an angel but might be a goddess's words. It was good to be alive. But why was that? What was the principle behind it? Even with her witch of science brain, she could not figure out the reason. This world is really amazing. If I hadn't encountered this after I died, I'm afraid I would never have had the chance to witness such an incredible thing. Teacher Tesla's notes were right. The more you know, the more you feel that this universe is worthy of awe. If I can survive, I really want to study it properly. Her habit of being a Frankenstein came out again. Even in death, she would not rest. It was almost carved into her soul. At this time, Nicole still did not know that in the long life ahead of her, her uncontrollable desire to seek truth would cause her to face a terrifying amount of work. Of course, this might not be torture or pain for her. On the contrary, it might be the luckiest thing in her life. After all, she no longer had to worry about blowing herself up. Finally, Qin Guang made it through. Just like many of the custom-made special training sessions in the past, the process was unbearable to recall, but the final result was quite perfect. The heavenly Holy Grail would never compromise. On the surface, the shape of his chest muscles did not change at all. They did not become plump because he became stronger. They were still the standard of a normal man. However, when Qin Guang tried to mix his arms together and exerted his strength, it was indeed much smoother than when he only had the Qilin arm. He even felt that his arm strength seemed to have improved. The muscles of the human body should be a complete whole, so there would be a chain effect. However, there was a side effect. His chest muscles were shaking uncontrollably. He was like an electric grasshopper, so much so that he could not talk to Lioli nicely. "Can you not shake at me like this? I feel like you are teasing me." Looking at the two light pectoral muscles that were shaking so hard that they were about to turn into mist, Lioli said speechlessly. Qin Guang spread his hands. "Sorry, I can't control it at all." "Is that so? Then quickly disappear from my sight." "Thank you." Lioli raised her leg and aimed the tip of her foot straight at Qin Guang's chest, wanting to kick him away. Qin Guang only did one thing to make her instantly calm down. It turned out that when he came in addition to wearing his underwear, he also hid a high-intensity anti-fog outdoor flashlight that he found in Pierce's villa. Taking advantage of the moment she raised her leg, Qin Guang took out the flashlight from his crotch, turned on the light with a whoosh, and shone it between Lioli's legs. The capitalist flashlight was indeed powerful. The effect of breaking through the fog was just right. As soon as the strong light shone out, the fog that was coiled around Lioli's waist to cover her body quickly began to fade to the naked eye. The beautiful scenery that was originally covered in white began to become fainter and fainter. focusing on anti-fog for 30 years, also known as the nemesis of mosaics, it was very useful. But the beauty of the world is indescribable. Chen Guang's eyes were also shining, and he was momentarily stunned. That beautiful valley in the mountains. Liu Li suddenly retracted her leg, and her face and ears turned red. Who would have thought that this guy would be so shameless to actually hide such a trick in his crotch? She had always felt that this guy's crotch was bulging abnormally. She had miscalculated. Changing her leg to a fist, Liu Li continued to pounce forward. She could not see the gap between her legs, but Chen Guang immediately aimed the flashlight at her chest, and the fog on her chest began to fade again. Bang! It was still that familiar smell. As he floated in the air, Chen Guang only had one sentence in his heart. My life has been worth it. When he opened his eyes again, he appeared in the bathtub again. The violent trembling of his pectoral muscles did not stop, and the water in his chest seemed to be boiling. However, it seemed that the speed of drug absorption had become faster. In less than 10 minutes, the water in the bathtub had all faded, and the drug had all entered his pectoral muscles. He felt warm and had endless strength. He stretched himself. Unexpectedly, the special training in the world in the cup actually had the effect of adjusting his biological clock. At this time, he did not feel tired at all after flying more than half of the world. He was refreshed and full of energy. Well, I have nothing to do anyway. Brother Pierce is so enthusiastic, and it's not appropriate for me to always give him the cold shoulder. I've lived in his villa for nothing these past 2 days. It's not a big deal to give him some money later if necessary. Now I'm going out for a stroll and see what the oil paste looks like. He changed into the exclusive Hawaiian suit, whistled, and went out. His pectoral muscles were still trembling, but the loose Hawaiian suit was enough to cover it. Actually, he wanted to do an outdoor live broadcast, but after considering the threat of the broken, he gave up on the idea. The feeling of being watched in the dark made him feel extremely uncomfortable. Sometimes, he even wondered if he should expand his business and help the Chinese military nurture a batch of people like Wang Lin. That way, they could easily crush the world of destruction to prevent those people from stirring up trouble every day. When Chen Guang walked to the backyard, Pierce came up to him excitedly and pulled him into the crowd. Chen Guang's eyelids twitched when he saw the scenery of the party. The ancients were not honest with me. The corrupt life of the people of America was really despicable. There were really so many beautiful models. Their style was extremely bold. Their clothes were very revealing, and their behavior was quite debauched. It was the complete embodiment of the corrupt life of America that was often framed on Weibo. Well, in fact, most of them wore nothing. Even if there were some who wore something, it was at most a thong, a and all sorts of other attire. If they did an outdoor live broadcast, they would be banned for 30 years because of pornography. This was simply degenerating with each passing day, and people's hearts were no longer what they used to be. As a veteran pervert in the country, Chen Guang couldn't stand the scene, and his face turned red. I lost. You guys are too good at playing. Chen Guang was looking at others, and others were looking at him. Although Pierce was always overly enthusiastic in front of him, in the city of Detroit, and even in the entire North American boxing world, Pierce was also a well-known figure. Whether it was the models who took the money to attend the party today, or the other men who were invited to the party, seeing that Pierce was so enthusiastic to Chen Guang, they would inevitably focus more on him, guessing and curious about the identity of this man. Pierce saw that Chen Guang was distracted by the models, so he quietly changed the way he addressed him. Leet, is this your first time attending this kind of party? Previously, Chen Guang had told him that his English name was Leet, which sounded much more intimate than Mr. Chen. No, I do this every day in China. I am not short of money. Chen Guang himself was a tycoon with a net worth of hundreds of millions. His reputation was the most important thing in the world. He couldn't lose the battle even if he lost, and he had to brag. That's right. I underestimated you, Mr. Chen. Looking at Chen Guang, whose face was flushed by the models who kept coming up to greet him, but he had to pretend to be experienced, Pierce had nothing to say to him. Wuxia people were really famous for their pride and suffering. In fact, Chen Guang didn't have a good impression of these blonde, blue-eyed, hot, and unbridled models. Even if these people came up to tease him, he wouldn't be tempted. First, these foreign beauties didn't quite meet his personal aesthetic standards. Second, having a relationship with these people didn't conform to his outlook on life. Third, he was a Wuxia person after all, and he didn't quite adapt to the worldview of the United States. How could he exchange bodily fluids with them if his worldview didn't match? So, he just looked at them. If he really wanted to do something, he'd better save it. At this time, Chen Guang was in the mood to look at other people in the party. In addition to several young boxers he had seen in China before, there were 7 or 8 strong men. Among them, there was a white guy who was shockingly strong. He had a tiger's back and a bear's waist, and his arms were thicker than Chen Guang's thighs. That's Bowman from New Jersey. He's a rather amateur super heavyweight boxer with a terrible temper. He's not very talented in boxing, and his tactical skills are very average. His dynamic vision and reflexes are terrible, but he is quite strong. He came to participate in the arm wrestling competition. Last year, he was in the top 16, but he was defeated by Dennis. That's not bad. Pierce introduced Dennis, who was last year's world champion and the overlord of the world of arm wrestling with extraordinary talent. When Chen Guang heard that Bowman was his competitor, his interest was piqued. He took a few more glances at Bowman. At the same time, Bowman was also looking at Chen Guang and raised his fist in provocation. By the way, right, are you interested in playing with that machine? As the two of them walked, Pierce pointed to a huge machine by the side of the pool. In front of the machine, there were 3 or 4 people. They were punching the target of the machine with their fists, making loud banging sounds. Chen Guang rolled his eyes. This guy still didn't give up. He wanted me to test the strength of his fists. Isn't this a common toy in the game hall? It's not interesting. Considering Pierce's heart, Chen Guang decided to politely decline him. Otherwise, how would he feel if he scared him to death? Unexpectedly, Pierce waved his hand. No. This is not a toy in the game hall. I spent tens of thousands of dollars to customize a professional strength tester. It's very accurate. Of course, for a professional boxer, it can be said to be a favorite toy. How about it? Try it? Old Pierce rubbed his fingers excitedly. He was getting more and more impatient. According to his judgment, right chin should be able to easily hit about 500 kilograms of force. But that was far from his limit. After his first punch, it would be time for him to show his professional level. He only needed to give him a very simple instruction. If he only used one punch posture, he should be able to easily grasp the essentials of strength. With the help of the machine, right chin could clearly see his own progress. He would definitely be fascinated by the feeling of becoming stronger quickly. Okay, I'll try. But Mr. Pierce, I really don't want to be a boxer. It's okay. You can try first. As he spoke, Pierce took Chen Guang to the strength tester. Hey Brett, what did you mean by that look? Are you looking down on me? As the two of them passed by the big man, Bowman suddenly reached out and blocked in front of Chen Guang. He looked at him with a face full of displeasure. Pierce was right. This guy's temper was really bad. Just now, Chen Guang looked at him a bit more, and he was not being honest. Bowman, shut up. Go play with your woman. Pierce glared at Bowman, which made the big man withdraw his hand in embarrassment. He said with grievance, Mr. Pierce, why are you so enthusiastic to this little Chinese shorty? Look at his arm. It's so thin. Is he malnourished? Chen Guang's eyes widened. He had lived for so many years, and there was actually a day when he was called a shorty? And what the hell is malnourished? My Kirin arm is actually malnourished. What's wrong with this world? Don't lie to me even though I didn't study much. Chen Guang silently looked at Bowman, who was nearly 1 meters tall and looked like a giant bear. Well, compared to this guy, he really was malnourished. Pierce was afraid that Chen Guang would be angry, so he shouted at Bowman again, Bowman, I told you to shut up. You are just hanging around in the super heavyweight division. Wright is a genius in the middleweight division. Why does he want to compare arms with you? When Bowman saw that Pierce was really angry, he felt suffocated and gasped for breath. Okay, Bowman, I know you don't have any bad intentions, but right is Chinese. If your behavior and words were to be exchanged in China, it would be a provocation. Do you understand? Right is my friend. You have to respect my friend. Pierce knew his bad temper, so he said a little more to try to ease his mood. Well, I'm very sorry, Mr. Pierce and Chinese right, but I still think you are too thin and weak. Your country must not have enough food to eat and often suffers from famine, right? Pierce also had to give up on Bowman. If he knew that this guy's brain was so short-circuited, why did he invite him to the party? Chen Guang finally spoke. He pointed at Pierce's dynamometer with a sullen face and snorted. Your name is Bowman, right? I have a question. What's your best result against that machine? It doesn't matter if you say I'm thin or short, but you actually said that our country is suffering from famine? It's a matter of national righteousness. Those who offend our country will pretend to be pretentious even if they are far away. This is intolerable. Old man will teach you a lesson today. Don't look down on people. I have to tell you that a thick arm is useless. A big fist is just for show. The size of an atomic bomb is not big, but it can blow you up. Chapter 696. What do you mean? Bowman squinted his eyes. Of course, he could hear the provocation in Chen Guang's words. Pierce seemed to have guessed Chen Guang's thoughts. He was quite conflicted. He wanted to see what level Chen Guang was at when he went all out on the dynamometer, but he didn't want Chen Guang's opponent to be Bowman. Bowman's technical and tactical level was very ordinary, and he never had many outstanding achievements in the super heavyweight boxing ring. He was often the background and stepping stone for others to become boxing champions. But no one could deny that the strength of his iron fist could not be said to dominate the boxing ring, but it could at least be ranked in the top 5 in history. It was very terrifying. His explosive power and absolute strength could be called perfect. What shackled him was only his boxing business, his reflexes, and his character flaws. Pierce quietly patted Chen Guang's shoulder. He thought about it again and still hoped that Chen Guang would not continue to waste words with Bowman. He was still hoping to help Chen Guang build up his confidence and then pull him into the professional boxing world. If he gave Bowman, who only had brute force and no brains, a blow to his confidence at the beginning, who could he reason with? Right? Don't pay attention to him. Let's go to the side and drink. You are not a professional boxer yet, and you can't bring out the full potential of your body. Don't care about other people's data. Pierce didn't even want to let Chen Guang test the waters on the dynamometer. He didn't think that Chen Guang, who had already entered the pretentious state, would be so easy to stop. My pectoral muscles were roaring, and my Qilin arms were raging, okay? If I don't use this guy named Bowman as a sacrifice, I'll be letting down my pectoral muscles that I've just trained. Actually, Chen Guang really wanted to know to what extent his arm strength would improve after training his pectoral muscles. Wouldn't it be nice to have a fresh and hot reference object? Bowman, I don't mean anything special. I just want to know what your best result is. Make it simple. Make it simple. Give me an accurate number and cut the crap. Chen Guang put on a cold face and crossed his arms, ignoring Pierce, who was trying to mediate. Bowman grinned. It sounds like you want to challenge me? Pierce clutched his forehead in pain. He couldn't stop it anymore. Bowman, you've trained for many years as a professional boxer. There's nothing to be proud of. Control your emotions. 747 kilograms, Mr. Pierce. This is the figure I got half a year ago before I participated in the Golden Belt competition. Bowman said proudly. The numbers were indeed frightening. In the entire history of boxing, there were no more than 10 people who could match Pierce's performance with a machine like that. Okay, Bowman, I know you've been working hard. That's it. Pierce was afraid that Chen Guang would be hurt, so he quickly tried to smooth things over. Chen Guang grinned. Yo, not bad. Bowman proudly said, of course, not everyone can be as strong as me. For example, you, Mr. Wright, the little guy from Wuxia. Although I'm not particularly rich, I can treat you to a good meal of steak. That will help you gain some weight. Shut up. 747 kilograms? That's nothing. Chen Guang suddenly turned around and walked to the dynamometer. Knowing Bowman's data, there was no point in talking nonsense with him. Wait. Pierce tried to stop him, but it was too late. Chen Guang trotted to the dynamometer and said loudly, "Excuse me, everyone. I'm in a hurry." "Mr. Pierce, why do you care about him? Even if this guy is really a genius like you said, isn't it good to teach him a lesson?" Bowman looked at Chen Guang's back disdainfully. He thought to himself, with this guy's physique, he should be on drugs if he can hit the standard of a middleweight boxer. Although Pierce's estimate was optimistic, and he thought that Chen Guang should be able to easily exceed 500 kilograms, it was still too far away from Bowman's peak of 747 kilograms. Alas, how did things become like this? In fact, there were many different theories about fist force. For example, a weightlifter's arm strength was undoubtedly very strong, but they might not be able to punch as hard as an average boxer. In addition, there were many different statistical methods. For example, it depended on the instantaneous explosive force of the fist when it hit the target, the thrust exerted when it continued to push forward, or the impulse and momentum transmitted by the fist to the opponent during the entire process of punching out and retracting the fist. After converting the parameters such as the area of force, a relatively accurate Newton force could also be obtained. Currently, the calculation method used by Pierce's equipment seemed to produce a higher number, but this did not mean that Pierce's theory was inaccurate, because it was originally a horizontal comparison calculation method. In the North American boxing world, Pierce's system was highly recognized. Almost all famous boxers had participated in the Pierce system test, and the results were quite convincing. Even in the world, many countries had widely adopted the Pierce system. When Wu Shan said that Chen Guang's fist force was 800 kilograms, he also used the calculation method of Pierce's system. This was also what Pierce was most proud of. In addition to being a well-known professional boxing coach, he was also a well-known sports theorist. His coaching career was much more successful than his boxing career. According to different classifications, boxers in each weight class had a fist force test ranking. Bowman's peak record was 747 kilograms, ranked third in the current super heavyweight class, and fifth in history. Currently, the number one in the current and history was another genius super heavyweight, Hancock. His peak record was 807 kilograms. On the other side, the crowd in front of the strength tester had long noticed the dispute between the Wuxia kid and Bowman. Seeing him stride over, the crowd had the mentality of watching a good show, and they all moved to the sides. This guy, he can't really want to challenge Bowman, right? Don't talk nonsense. Although Bowman has never won a gold belt, his punches are really no joke. Last year, I gave him a punch and almost KO'd on the spot. I don't know what Mr. Pierce is thinking. Why doesn't he stop this meaningless challenge? After all, this right chin and Bowman are not in the same weight class. There is no value in comparing, right? Who knows? But it seems that Mr. Pierce really values right chin. Maybe he really is a middleweight genius, the next Mayweather or Pacquiao. Listening to the crowd gradually gather around him and talk, Bowman finally realized that he seemed to have done something wrong. "Mr. Pierce, I'm really sorry. You know I don't have much bad intentions towards him. I've always spoken like this." Pierce waved his hand helplessly. "All right, shut up. If he doesn't want to become a professional boxer because of this, don't even think about asking me to train you in the future. Even if you pay me $500,000 a month, it's still impossible." When the crowd heard this, they were finally sure that they had guessed correctly. Mr. Pierce really did like this Wuxia guy. Bowman was anxious. With his level and talent, after getting a tailor-made training plan by Pierce, he had finally been able to stand in the ring of the finals of the fight for the gold belt from a second-rate boxer. If he really offended Pierce, he could almost directly announce his retirement. "Don't." "All right, Bowman, Mr. Pierce is angry. Whatever you say is useless. I will participate in your retirement charity match." "Jared, you bastard, I will definitely blast you into the sky." Pierce waved his hand impatiently. "Be quiet, all of you. After saying that, he nervously looked at Chen Guang, who was a few meters in front of him. At this time, Chen Guang was standing about a meter in front of the dynamometer, but he was not in a hurry to throw a punch. Instead, he closed his eyes and hung his hands very relaxed on both sides. No one knew what he was doing. Is this the magic of the Wuxia people? Is he practicing Qigong? China Kung Fu? Like Bruce Lee? Someone couldn't help but tease. At this time, Chen Guang suddenly opened his eyes. He clenched his hands into fists and raised them to the level of the tip of his nose. His back was slightly arched like a slingshot, and the tip of his left foot was on tiptoe. He was ready to punch. Pierce's worried eyes suddenly focused. He didn't know why, but he seemed to vaguely hear a buzzing vibration from Chen Guang's direction. It felt like an electric motor was storing energy. Pierce didn't hear it wrong. The buzzing sound was actually because Chen Guang was constantly tightening all the muscles in his body, especially the two pectoralis major that had just been trained. They couldn't stop shaking, and the vibration was even more violent than when the phone was switched on. Chen Guang adjusted his breathing, and his muscles were getting tighter and tighter. Pierce's eyes became more and more serious. Unlike other boxers or ordinary players who participated in arm wrestling, he had a pair of very sharp eyes. In his eyes, Chen Guang inexplicably gave him a feeling of extremely terrible explosive power. The loose Hawaiian suit wrapped around his body. As he kept accumulating energy in his body, a gust of wind blew, making him look a little funny at this time. But Pierce couldn't laugh at all. He faintly had an illusion in his heart that Wright didn't seem to need training. He knew how to use force. In fact, Pierce really didn't guess wrong. Previously in the cafe in Yanjing, the reason why he felt that Chen Guang's boxing skills were very poor, and his strength was very poor, was purely because Chen Guang was playing the role of Will Smith, who played Ollie. He deliberately lowered his level in the world of acting. Chen Guang's Kirin arm had already been tempered in the world in the cup, and it had even evolved to a more perfect level than ordinary people at the genetic level. How could he not know how to use force? Since they wanted to see God, and Chen Guang felt that it was necessary to defend the dignity of the Chinese people, of course, he didn't hold back anymore. He planned to scare Bowman, who had a bad mouth, into shutting his mouth, or at least not closing it. In the past, he had never tried to punch with all his strength. After all, when fighting with people who would let you pose for a long time, there was no doubt that today would be his heaviest punch that surpassed himself. Finally, Chen Guang moved. The muscles of his right leg suddenly tightened, and his left foot, which was on tiptoe, suddenly took a big step forward. At the same time, his right leg, which had just tightened and bent, opened up like a spring. His originally arched back also quickly stretched out. Chen Guang's left hand was horizontally in front of his body to maintain balance, and his right hand was pulled back like a bow, tightly stretched. At this moment, Pierce was completely stunned. What a perfect strength technique, what a terrible explosive force. Not only did he have a terrible strength in his hands, but the strength that his legs released for a short period of time when they bounced out was even stronger than the former heavy cannon of the football world, Roberto Carlos. This guy was simply the embodiment of strength and beauty. Chen Guang's right hand opened up more and more, and his body also leaned forward. Time seemed to stop at this moment, but suddenly accelerated. His right hand finally exerted force, swinging wildly, and his fist blasted out like a cannonball. Boom! Almost no one clearly saw how his right fist blasted out, but there was already a deafening loud sound coming from the dynamometer. The dynamometer, which was verified to be able to withstand more than 1,500 kilograms of force when it was tested, trembled wildly, and the target that had been knocked over by Chen Guang's fist was on the verge of collapse. The huge backyard of the villa was silent. Everyone stared at the terrible 4-digit number on the digital display on top of the dynamometer with their mouths wide open, unable to say a word. 1,088 kilograms. Pierce went crazy, completely crazy. He covered his mouth and almost couldn't help but want to cry and kneel on the ground. He was 100% sure that this dynamometer, which he had personally participated in designing, couldn't have any possibility of malfunction, and the data that Wright typed out must be real and reliable. He really didn't dream that on such an occasion, for the first time, he would see a human's fist break through the 4-digit natural moat and directly advance to the terrible number of 1,088 kilograms. As a retired boxer, as a representative of the professional boxing world, Pierce knew what this meant. This made him so happy that his eyes brimmed with tears, and he even felt that he had no regrets in this life. What was even more frightening was that this number was actually punched out by a middleweight. Bowman's mouth was wide open, and he really couldn't say a word for a long time. Impossible. Absolutely impossible. Something must have gone wrong somewhere. T gone wrong. This is definitely an unprecedented punch in human history. Right? Oh my God, my right, you really are the angel that God gave me. You're like a light cannon. That's right, a light cannon. Right, from now on, this will be your nickname in the boxing ring. Pierce slowly walked in Qin Guang's direction with an intoxicated look on his face. Lord Guang was also shocked. Compared to the 800 kilograms he had punched out the last time on Phoenix Spring Mountain, he had already unknowingly broken through to the level of 1,088 kilograms. That was an increase of a whole 35%. It looked like the hardships he had suffered recently hadn't been in vain. His Qilin arm had already reached its limit. This change must have been caused by the evolution of the other muscles in his body, such as the perfected wind god's legs and the 2 great pectoral muscles. He turned back to glance at Bowman very proudly and coolly. Bowman, let me gift you a sentence. A big head doesn't mean a hard fist. Do you understand now? Awesome, I love seeing you guys so scared that you want to kneel on the ground. Needless to say, in just a moment, the dozens of people present began to send faith points to his Qilin arm. Although due to the number of people, there wasn't a lot of faith points, but at least it proved that this kind of posturing was a very effective way to gain faith points. Then, Qin Guang coolly shook his head again, intending to wave to enhance his posturing effect. This *CK. I forgot to train the pectoral muscles in the chest and abdomen. My back muscles are strained. You're tuning in to the Wang Lin's Journey YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.